Chapter 531. The entire Heavenly Book shrine didn't have a roof. It was just a circular shrine that was surrounded by huge stone pillars. The ground of the shrine was carved out of a huge rock. Rays of golden light enshrouded it. In the surroundings of the shrine, there were a total of 8 golden stone tablets that were glowing with a faint glow. Divine characters were flashing on them. Clearly, they were the legendary divine character stone tablets. That is a divine book? Qin Yin asked with her beautiful eyes wide open. Wu Tong nodded. Yes. Spiritual scholar turned around and cupped his fists respectfully. Successor, although the Heavenly Book shrine has an illusion restriction, with God King Huo Wu's abilities, she definitely won't be able to resist her for long. We can't stay here for long. Successor, please immediately comprehend the divine books on the stone tablets. These divine books are priceless treasures that God Emperor Fuxi left for you and the Shattered Cauldron realm. There are a total of 8 stone tablets here, and they record the 8 laws of wind, fire, thunder, earth, ice, light, life, and space. Successor, there is no need to say much. Please immediately read and comprehend them. Our time is very limited. Got it. Lin Muyu quickly arrived in front of a divine book stone tablet. It was a divine character of the law of fire. The oracle bone inscriptions on it were glowing with a faint golden glow. There were no labels, so Lin Muyu had to divide the sections by herself. There were more than 1,000 long and short inscriptions. This was truly a little terrifying. The divine books were indeed much longer and more complicated than the earthly book and heavenly book. Shwa! Lin Muyu's spiritual sense entered the stone tablet. One by one, the golden inscriptions flew past her mind. It was as though they were imprinted in her mind. As she read them word by word, her surroundings suddenly turned into a sea of fire. There were ashes everywhere. Between heaven and earth, there were only surging flames and torrential flames. Living beings were wailing and crying. Above the sky, a beam of fire descended. It was a sovereign god emperor, fire god. When the fire god general raised the sharp sword in his hand high up in the air, raging flames quickly swept across the land, destroying the entire plain. Lin Muyu suddenly let out a miserable howl and stumbled back a few steps. A paragraph of divine text seeped into his eye, and was hard to forget. The stone tablet slowly cracked, and a wisp of flame contained within the stone tablet lingered around Lin Muyu. Then, it slowly merged with his fighting flame. Lin Muyu only felt an unimaginable sense of exhaustion. He couldn't help but murmur, Fire Attribute Divine Book. Fire God Armageddon? Qin Yin gently held his arm and asked with concern, have you comprehended it? Lin Muyu gently hugged Qin Yin's shoulder and said, Xiao Yin, help me to the other stone tablet. I still have some spiritual energy left, so I should be able to comprehend another one. All right. The two of them stepped on the blue stone and came before another stone tablet. It was a wind element divine tome. Lin Muyu forced herself to focus her gaze on the divine text, and her spiritual perception quickly flew into the stone tablet. Just like before, she soon entered the illusory realm created by the divine tome. Strong winds howled in the surroundings, and tornadoes raged between the heavens and earth, tearing the cities apart and crushing the residences of the common people. The land was filled with wails and cries. Wind element divine tome, storm dragon spin. In the blink of an eye, nearly 1,200 divine characters of storm dragon spin were imprinted in Lin Muyu's heart, and the golden stone tablet also shattered with a crack. Lin Muyu took a deep breath, and his entire body was filled with fatigue. At this time, a faint golden luster had already appeared on his beard. Scholar Ling looked at him in surprise, and said, you comprehended the divine power of 2 divine books in one go. I'm afraid your strength is not enough. Don't force yourself anymore. 2 hours have passed, and we don't have much time left. I'm afraid God Monarch Huo Wu will bring people here soon. It's already been 2 hours? Lin Muyu was shocked. Yes. He never thought that a short moment in Lin Muyu's eyes would take so long. He frowned, and said, "Can these divine writings be taken away?" Scholar Ling said, "You can make a rubbing and take it away, but the rubbing can only take away the surface of the divine text. The guiding divine power left behind by God Emperor Fuxi in the stone tablet cannot be obtained. Even if you obtain the complete divine text, unless you are a genius, I'm afraid it will be difficult to write it into a divine book. At most, it will be a heavenly book or an earthly book." Lin Muyu nodded. "Is there a way to delay Ouyang Yen and Luolan?" "Yes." Scholar Ling frowned, and said, "There is an extremely powerful existence imprisoned in the mountain beside the divine book shrine, the Demon King. Back then, God Emperor Fuxi spent a lot of effort to tame him. But these years, without the deterrence of Fuxi's divine power, the Demon King has become increasingly violent and no longer listens to his subordinates' orders. If the heir really has Fuxi's divine power, don't give it a try, the Demon King might submit again." "All right then, bring me there." "Yes." When passing by a divine book stone tablet, Lin Muyu glanced at it. It was a divine book of the law of light. He said, "Xiao Yin, read this stone tablet here and try to comprehend it. Wait for me to come back. If there are any divine texts that you don't understand, I will teach you later." "Then, all right then." Qin Yin originally wanted to see the Demon King, but for the sake of the divine book, she had no choice. On the side of the mountain rock, lines of intersecting runes appeared. Wu Tong walked forward and lightly pressed his palm on the giant rock. With a low shout, a door opened. It was actually a secret chamber. When the door was opened, a fishy and rotten smell wafted over. Furthermore, Lin Muyu's spirit pulse technique immediately had an intense reaction. The aura power in front of them was extraordinarily strong. It was even stronger than Scholar Ling, Ice Palm Fire Fist, and the intensity of the aura power was not inferior to Ouyang Yan's. Walking down the damp and cold stone steps, Jingjian raised his hand and lit a torch. He held the torch and walked in front, illuminating Lin Muyu, Scholar Ling, and the others. The path in the cave wasn't too far away. However, when Lin Muyu took a closer look, she realized that the two sides of the stone path were actually suspended in the air. Looking over, it was as though she could see the stars in the sky. Scholar Ling saw this and couldn't help but laugh. "Successor, this is an illusion left behind by God Emperor Fuxi. It is called the Star Vast Realm. It can seal all powers, so although the Demon King is strong, he is unable to show off his might here. The Star Vast Realm can see through tens of thousands of stars in the celestial domain. However, don't fall down. This illusion leads directly to the purgatory plane." "Oh." Lin Muyu couldn't help but be speechless. This place was too dangerous. The suspended stone path extended into the distance and directly connected to a punishment platform that was carved out of a giant rock. On the punishment platform, there was a giant beast kneeling. Its body was no different from the Demon King, but the hair on its head was indeed golden. Its hands were pierced by chains and it was hung between two giant stone pillars. There were many runes circulating on the chains. If it wasn't for these runes, it probably wouldn't have been able to seal such a strong Demon King. Shashi, Wu Tong and Jingjian walked in front, one on the left and one on the right. They stepped onto the giant rock and split up. Jingjian was hot-tempered and he hollered, "Demon King, raise your head." However, the Demon King, who had his head lowered, didn't raise it. Instead, his hands that were locked extended out sharp claws. The sharp claws gave off a chilling glow under the starlight. The Demon King's voice was a little hoarse. He didn't even raise his head and smiled, "Ice Palm and Fire Fist, what are you doing here? Aren't you afraid that I will tear you apart?" "Afraid, of course I am." Jingjian clenched his fist and said, "However, you are locked up now. I can let you have a taste of my fist." The Demon King laughed coldly, "You rats only know how to take advantage of others. If I can get out, I will definitely cut you into pieces." "Humph." Scholar Ling held an iron fan in his hand and opened it with a schwa sound. The ribs of the fan were suffused with faint divine light. He said, "Demon King, you don't know what's good for you. Raise your dog head. The successor of His Majesty God Emperor Fuxi is already here. If you dare to be so disrespectful, don't blame me for chopping off your dog head." Ah, the Demon King's lowered body suddenly trembled. He slowly raised his head. It was a face that was filled with a ruthless aura. He looked at Lin Muyu and couldn't help but laugh loudly. His laughter was filled with penetrating power and was extremely arrogant and unruly. This weak kid? Impossible, His Majesty God Emperor would never allow such a weak kid to be his successor. Impudent. Scholar Ling shouted in a low voice, "His Majesty's successor is right here. Don't be so arrogant." As he said that, he signaled to Lin Muyu that it was time to show off his strength. Lin Muyu nodded her head and hollered. The king battle flame surged around her body. At the same time, she opened her fingers and streaks of golden Fuxi god power flowed in her palm. Instantly, the entire star vast habitat seemed to be affected by Fuxi's god power, causing it to twist slightly. There were even many giant stars in the sky that started to descend. Along with many meteors flying around, the star vast habitat instantly became a dangerous place. Ah! The Demon King knelt there in shock. His hands couldn't move at all. He could only raise his head and look at the successor of God Emperor Fuxi. Wutong frowned and said, "Star vast habitat is about to be destroyed." Scholar Ling quickly removed the seal on the Demon King. "Let's head out and talk. Anyway, the successor is here and we aren't afraid that the Demon King will go berserk once more." "Okay." The spiritual scholar, Su Hao, gently waved his iron-boned fan. Immediately, the golden sealing runes on the Demon King's shackles dispersed one by one. With a kacha sound, the iron chains that shackled the Demon King's arms cracked and disappeared. Hua, the Demon King took in a deep breath like he was relieved of a huge burden. He still knelt there. Along with the trembling of the star vast habitat, his body also trembled. He raised his head and a fierce glow appeared in his eyes. As if Scholar Ling had seen through Zhong Yu's thoughts, he said, "If you want to kill the inheritor, then go ahead. But you must know that if you hurt the inheritor, no matter where you run, the Fuxi celestial monarch of the human realm beyond heavens will find you and turn you into ashes. He will also annihilate your beaming celestial race and make you disappear from the universe." The Demon King shuddered and the fierceness in his eyes disappeared. Very quickly, he knelt on the ground like a tamed dog. The king of the Demon race is willing to listen to the successor's orders. I have no regrets. Lin Muyu smiled, "Let's head out first." Okay. Chapter 532. Hong Hong Hong. When the five of them flew out of the cave, the star vast habitat behind them exploded. The entire star vast habitat had been destroyed by Lin Muyu's Fuxi power. Rumbling sound spread out from within the mountain. In the blink of an eye, the entire mountain range collapsed and turned into a deep abyss. Looking down, one couldn't see the bottom at all. "What is it?" Qin Yin quickly went up and asked with concern. Her eyes landed on the Demon King behind Lin Muyu and she became wary. What is that?" "It's okay." Lin Muyu grabbed her soft little hand and asked, "How many words do you not know?" 128. "Oh my god, there are over 1,000 words and you don't recognize so many of them." I. Qin Yin pouted, feeling extremely wronged as she said, "I've only studied the divine text for less than 2 months. Ever since the heavenly imperial gate was sealed, all of the heavenly tomes lost their effectiveness, and the divine text teachers on the continent were immediately frozen and disintegrated, so besides those heavenly tomes families, no one else studies the divine text." Okay. Lin Muyu smiled, "Let me teach you the divine writings first." NN. Qin Yin smiled and nodded her head. Ling Shu said, Then. What will the Demon King do?" Lin Muyu turned around and looked at the Demon King. "Yes, heir." The Demon King knelt down obediently. "I will listen to your orders." Lin Muyu said, you and Ice Palm and Fire Fist will go against the enemy. You have to block Ouyang Yen and Luo Lan. Do you understand? God? The Beeman King suddenly became excited, his eyes filled with killing intent. He smiled, there are actually gods in the mortal world? That's great, that's great. Wu Tong, Jing Jian, the two of you trash, bring me to fight the enemy. Wu Tong and Jing Jian were so furious that they wanted to beat him up. However, the Beeman King was too strong. Even if the two of them worked together, they might not be his match. They could only swallow their anger and nod their heads. They cupped their fists towards Lin Muyu and the three of them left the Heavenly Book God Hall. Within 10 minutes, Lin Muyu had taught Qin Yin all the oracle bone inscriptions that she did not understand. Then, she found another stone tablet and began to comprehend the third book. Divine Book of the Law of Life, Revival of the Gods. When Lin Muyu finished reading the divine text, her state of mind quickly entered the illusion brought by the divine text. A desolate land was filled with raging flames and destruction. Countless forests were being ravaged by the flames of war and heavenly flames. The forests were burning, and the common people were crying. Countless people who were seriously ill or seriously injured were struggling at death's door in the mud. At this moment, heavy rain started to fall from the sky. The sky was filled with dense divine light as a 36E Dominator God Emperor appeared above the clouds. Her beautiful eyes were filled with compassion. She held a bamboo flute in her hand and gently blew it. The land that was being destroyed was moved. In an instant, countless raindrops containing healing sacred light fell on the mortal world. The heavenly flames were extinguished, and the injuries of the living beings on the ground rapidly healed. Auspicious clouds appeared in the sky, and the mortal world was healed in the blink of an eye. The goddess of life smiled as she looked at the mortal world. She put down the bamboo flute and lightly stepped on the void. She brought the trembling 36E towards the heaven realm. Swish! An imprint was branded on Lin Muyu's heart. She had also comprehended the divine book of the law of life. But at this time, Lin Muyu's heart was filled with fatigue. Her forehead was covered with sweat. Successor, don't force yourself anymore, the spirit scholar couldn't bear to watch from the side. He said, I only comprehend one divine book every 3,000 years. You have already comprehended 3 divine books in just a few hours. That's enough, don't force yourself anymore. However, Lin Muyu knew that she could not let go of this precious opportunity. Otherwise, she might not have such an opportunity in the future. She forced herself to stand up and said, I'm fine. Let me rest for a few minutes. I need to comprehend 4 godly tomes before I can leave. Scholar Ling, go and copy the remaining 3 godly tomes for me. If we can't bring these godly tomes away, we can only destroy them. Yes. The spirit scholar cupped his fists and said, I understand. Even if we can't use these divine books for ourselves, we definitely can't let Ouyang Yen, Luo Lan, or the other fierce gods obtain them. That's right. Go. When the spirit scholar went to copy the other 3 divine books, Lin Muyu had already arrived in front of the tablet of the 4th divine book. It was a divine book of the law of thunder and lightning. Thunder and lightning were the most difficult force to control. Presumably, it wouldn't be easy to comprehend the divine book of the law of thunder and lightning. At this time, Lin Muyu had a new understanding of the divine books. The divine books were like scrolls. Just like in those fantasy stories, activating the scrolls would bring about great power. On the other hand, the divine books were like the forbidden spells in the fantasy world. A divine book was the carrier of the forbidden spells. In the future, the Shattered Cauldron realm would be a battle between the forbidden spells. Pa pa pa, when Lin Muyu's palm covered the stone tablet, a bolt of lightning slowly flowed through. It seemed that this stone tablet originally contained some thunder divine power. When she turned around, she saw Qin Yin concentrating on studying the more than 1,000 words of the Law of Light divine text. She didn't know if she could comprehend it. If she couldn't, she could only copy it down and study it properly when she returned to Lanyan City. In the blink of an eye, countless bolts of lightning had already appeared in Lin Muyu's Yi. Bolts of lightning rained down on the undulating Yi. Thunder elemental law, raging thunder purgatory. There were more and more lightning bolts in the Yi. After an unknown period of time, the illusion of purgatory appeared in Lin Muyu's Yi. In a fiery red purgatory, evil spirits howled and ownerless souls cried incessantly. Countless bolts of lightning flashed and fell from the sky, forming a destructive lightning net. It was as if the entire purgatory was going to be destroyed. Lin Muyu's spiritual sense stood in the purgatory. Scorching tornadoes of lightning swept across her face, causing her cloak to whistle. It was really a little scary. After enduring an unknown amount of violent lightning, finally, the Yi gradually calmed down. The violent power quickly rushed into Lin Muyu's beer. The stone tablet shattered, and Lin Muyu knelt on the ground. Comprehending 4 divine books in a row had far exceeded the endurance of her soul, and she quickly fainted. On the side, Qin Yin stood there in a daze, surrounded by a golden light. She had entered the critical stage of the divine book of the law of light, holy light brilliance. Less than 10 seconds after Lin Muyu fainted, the stone tablet in front of her broke into 2 with a crack. The divine power in the stone tablet flowed into her body. She also comprehended it and fainted. Sigh, Ling Shu looked at Lin Muyu and Qin Yin, who had fainted on the ground and couldn't help but feel helpless. He said, "What should we do? I don't know if the Beeman King and the others can resist Ouyang Yen and Luolan. What should we do? The successor and this young lady are also unconscious. What should we do? What should we do?" At this moment, a loud noise came from outside the Heavenly Book Shrine. A giant Beeman beast waved its sharp claws and rushed in. It shouted at Ling Shu from afar, but no one knew what it was saying. Ling Shu frowned. What? Luolan has already brought people over? They are a mile away? Oh my god. Ling Shu clenched his teeth. We can't wait any longer. We must destroy this place and bring the successor away. As he spoke, he pounced forward and waved his iron-boned fan. His battle energy flew out and smashed the remaining 3 divine tomes. He turned around and carried Lin Muyu and Qin Yin to the center of the shrine. Another cyan iron-boned fan appeared in his hand. As he waved it slowly, he drew the power of heaven and earth. It was a middle-grade heavenly book of the law of space. Swoosh! Air currents swirled and the 3 of them disappeared from where they stood. The giant Beeman beast was stunned. It extended its sharp claws in the direction of Ling Shu as if it was saying, "Wait for master, what about me?" Behind him, a crack appeared in the space. Luolan, who was wearing a long robe, appeared in the sky. She looked at the broken divine tomes and cursed angrily, "I'm too late again. Ling Shu, you bastard. I will definitely tear you into pieces." Roar! The giant Beeman beast roared angrily at Luolan, who was in the sky. "Little worm, you want to kill me?" Luolan was frustrated that she had nowhere to vent her anger. She raised her hand and sent a palm strike at the Beeman beast. The poor Beeman beast couldn't even withstand a single blow and was instantly smashed into pieces. At this time, a large number of disciples from the 7 world palaces rushed into the valley. All of them stared dumbfoundedly at the destroyed mountain range and the Heavenly Book Shrine. Lu Zhan slowly walked forward and said, "Master, the forest of divine tomes is gone, the 8 divine tomes are all in ruins. We are still too late." Luolan snorted coldly. Ling Shu used the Heavenly Book of the Law of Space to escape. He can't have gone far. Chase after him. Right at this moment, another disciple stood in front of a stone stele and said, "Master, look, there's a piece of divine scripture that hasn't been completely destroyed here. It's the laws of light, but it's broken into 2. If we glue it back together, then perhaps we'll be able to form a complete divine scripture." "Is that so?" Luo Lan's heart skipped a beat and she said happily, "Quick, stick the stone tablet back together and bring it back to the 7 world palaces." "Yes, master." Lu Zhan furrowed his brows and said, "Master, the dancing fire god monarch Ouyang Yen is still fighting with the Beeman King and the ice palm fire fist outside the valley. Should we go help her? If Ouyang Yen is killed, I'm afraid it would be a great loss to Ariha country. Humph, Luolan snorted coldly and said, Ouyang Yen is naturally arrogant. She's just a crippled god whose godhood was stolen. After descending into the human world, she actually surpassed me. How hateful. Let her fight. It's best if she dies, but even if she doesn't die, it won't be any better. The news about this piece of divine text must be kept a secret. Ouyang Yen cannot know about it. Do you understand? Yes, disciple understands. Chapter 533. In a gloomy and cold bare cave, the light of a jade pendant slowly flowed, illuminating the cave. Scholar Ling's entire body was trembling, his arms hugging his knees as he sat there. His expression was rather tired, and his once handsome face was already lined with wrinkles. His black hair was already beginning to turn white. To the side, Lin Muyu and Qin Yin lay side by side, their bodies covered by a bare skin. The two were still sleeping, and this was already the 7th day. Ah! Lin Muyu slowly awoke from her unconsciousness. When she opened her eyes, she saw the gradually aging appearance of Scholar Ling. Successor, you're finally awake. Scholar Ling excitedly exclaimed. How did you? Lin Muyu was dumbfounded. Su Hao, how did you become like this? Scholar Ling awkwardly replied, in order to avoid the pursuit of God King Huowu and Luolan, we could only bring you to the edge of the Heavenly Tome Monolith Forest. The divine power of the time seal here is already rather weak, so this subordinate's life is quickly fading. Reverting to my old appearance is to be expected. After all, I've already lived for more than 10,000 years. Divine power of the time seal? Lin Muyu could not help but ask, if I use Fushi's divine power, can I restore your appearance? Perhaps. Scholar Ling also did not know the result. But it's best to leave the successor's divine power for him to use. This subordinate cannot waste the successor's divine power. No. Lin Muyu left no room for doubt as she stopped him. Just sit quietly. As she spoke, Lin Muyu sat cross-legged and gave a soft cry. Instantly, golden light exploded from her body. Fushi's divine power flew out from her body and into Scholar Ling like a ribbon. Strands of it seeped into Scholar Ling's sea of consciousness, and a miraculous sight occurred. Scholar Ling's grizzled hair gradually returned to black, and the wrinkles on his face also slowly lessened. Lin Muyu took a deep breath and continued to use his divine power to heal Scholar Ling's old age. He was completely unaware that Qin Yin had also woken up and was staring at him with her beautiful eyes wide open. Not long after, Scholar Ling regained his appearance from 7 days ago. He knelt down joyfully and said, "Thank you, successor, for using your power to heal me." "You're welcome." Lin Muyu turned around and saw Qin Yin. She couldn't help but smile. "Xiao Yin, you're awake too. How do you feel now?" After absorbing the power of the divine book, Qin Yin's cultivation and state of mind had improved greatly. She smiled and replied, "It's very good. I feel that my cultivation has improved." "That's good." Lin Muyu asked, "Scholar Ling, how many days have we been hiding here?" Scholar Ling replied, 7 days and 7 nights. So long. Lin Muyu couldn't help but knit her brows and said, "How are the Beeman King, Wu Tong, and Jingjian?" "They're all right." Scholar Ling sat cross-legged and said respectfully, "Before God Emperor Fuxi ascended to the sky beyond heaven, he placed a restriction on us. We can feel each other's life force. They're only seriously injured and not in danger of dying." On the other hand, Ouyang Yen and Luo Lan's subordinates suffered heavy losses. Many of their divine domain experts died. They really deserved it. Lin Muyu said, "They should have taken away many of the heavenly books, right?" "Yes." Scholar Ling replied truthfully, Ouyang Yen and Luo Lan made a total of 13 heavenly books, over 30 earthly books, and countless spiritual books and human books from the heavenly book forest. However, they were just rubbings. Even if they were given to a specialist to study, the chances of them becoming a book would be very low. The heavenly books were created by God Emperor Fuxi, so it's not that easy to become a book. Yes. Lin Muyu said worriedly, it seems like a heavenly book war between the Empire and the Iha country is unavoidable. Qin Yi nodded her head and said nothing. Scholar Ling smiled and said, Successor, you don't have to worry too much. The heavenly books that you've comprehended are all-encompassing. As long as you learn the heavenly books, you'll be able to inscribe the heavenly books and earthly books of the same law. A heavenly book already contains all the heavenly books of the same law, so successor just needs to properly study the heavenly books of the 8 laws. Yes, that's great. Lin Muyu said, have Ouyang Yan and Luo Lan's men left yet? They couldn't find us. They left the White Leaves Forest 3 days ago. Scholar Ling cupped his fists and said, Successor, it's already safe outside. Let's go out. This subordinate needs some time to rebuild the Heavenly Book Forest's defenses. I believe that the cultivators of this continent will come endlessly to cause trouble for the Heavenly Book Forest. Yes. The 3 of them crawled out of the cave. This bare cave was dozens of meters deep. It was no wonder that Luo Lan, Ouyang Yan, and the others couldn't find them. It must have been difficult for Scholar Ling to find such a place to hide. Within the White Leaves Forest, there were smashed spiritual tomes and human tomes everywhere. Those who saw it could not help but feel a little ashamed. Humans should be most proficient in destruction. The Heavenly Book Forest of monoliths that Fuxi had painstakingly left behind had actually been mostly destroyed after this battle. Scholar Ling's heart ached, and his eyes were filled with sorrow. They didn't walk too far before the sharp howls of experts could be heard in the distance. In the next moment, 3 figures appeared in the forest. They were the Beeman King, Wu Tong, and Jing Jian. This subordinate pays his respects to Successor. Successor is fine. This is truly great. Jing Jian said respectfully. The Beeman King was also kneeling on the ground. There was a huge burn wound on his shoulder, which had scorched his hair. There was even a wound on his shoulder that had burst open and flowed with fresh blood. Presumably, this was the masterpiece that Ouyang Yan had left behind. Lin Muyu nodded, is everyone all right? We're fine. Lin Muyu walked forward and took out a bottle of first-grade healing medicine from her cosmos sack. She handed it to the Beeman King and said, this bottle of medicine can heal your injuries. Use it immediately. The injury caused by Ouyang Yan's godly power can't be healed with ordinary medicine. Many thanks, Successor. The Beeman King received the healing medicine with some suspicion. Probably when God Emperor Fuxi was in the mortal realm, he had not been so kind to him. When the healing medicine was poured on his wound, a cool and comfortable feeling came from his wound. The Beeman King could not help but let out a gasp. A rather obvious healing feeling came from his wound. This was indeed a good medicine. He could not help but kowtow again and said, many thanks, Successor. You're welcome. Lin Muyu looked at the 4 people and said, Xiao Yin and I are about to leave the White Leaves Forest. You guys continue to guard the Heavenly Book Forest. You must take care of yourselves and cultivate as much as possible. When you step into the deity realm, come find me in Lanyan City. Understood? Yes, Successor. Go. Yes. The 4 people turned around reluctantly, especially the Beeman King. He actually turned his head back to look at Lin Muyu. It was not easy for him to meet such a benevolent master. In the blink of an eye, he was about to part with her. He was quite reluctant. Thinking about it, Fuxi must have beaten the Beeman King many times in the past because of his violent temperament. Not long after, the treading snow warhorse charged out of the forest and happily paced back and forth beside its master. Lin Muyu laughed heartily and caressed treading snow's long face. She stroked its fur and said, consider yourself lucky that you did not get eaten by the Beeman these past few days. Treading snow let out a long neigh and stood on its hind legs. It seemed to be saying that it ran fast and the beeman could not catch up. After resting for a while and eating, Lin Muyu and Qin Yin changed into a new set of hunter's clothes. He then mounted the horse and extended his hand to Qin Yin. He smiled and said, "It seems that before we return to White Leaves City, we can only ride on the same horse." Qin Yin blushed and very quickly mounted the horse and sat in Lin Muyu's embrace. She immediately felt very safe. The warhorse neighed and in the blink of an eye, galloped out of the Heavenly Tome monolith forest. Hiya! Hiya! The sound of horses galloping came from outside the Heavenly Tome monolith forest. It was a group of Iha Empire mercenaries carrying battle axes, longbows, and other weapons. This group of people had probably just received the news of the Heavenly Tome monolith forest and had come to die. Many of the beemans that Ling's scholar had tamed in the Heavenly Tome monolith forest were injured and needed to eat meat to recover from their injuries. "Hey, that kid!" A large man with a face full of curly beard carried a broadsword and urged his horse forward. He shouted, "Did you guys come out from the Heavenly Tome monolith forest?" "Nope." Lin Muyu urged his horse forward and returned to his horse. He said, "My sister and I are hunters from White Leaves City. This time, we came to the White Leaves Forest to hunt a kind of spiritual beast called the forked bear and use its paw to treat father's illness. However, we didn't expect that there were no forked bears in this area. Those spiritual beasts are incomparably savage. They even ate my sister's horse. If you guys go forward, you must be careful." The large man was stunned. You guys came from the front?" "Yes." Lin Muyu said, "But we didn't go too deep. Those ferocious beasts are too scary. Although you guys are mercenaries, I advise you not to enter this forest." The large man laughed and patted his chest. "Don't worry. Our cruel willow mercenary group won't give up so easily. You guys go quickly and don't disturb our mercenary group's search for the Heavenly Tome." "Well, then take care." Lin Muyu cupped her fists and immediately urged her horse to leave with Qin Yin. It was better to cause less trouble and return to Lanyan City as soon as possible to take charge of the overall situation. After all, Qin Yin had been away from Lanyan City for at least half a month. She did not know how Tang Xiaoxi and Feng Jixing were doing, nor did she know how the political affairs of Lanyan City were handled. However, Tang Xiaoxi was exceptionally intelligent. She should not have done anything wrong. They galloped along the way. Treading snow ate the wild grass with strong spiritual power in the forest and became plump and strong. Even though they were riding on horses, they still maintained a high speed. It was true that they could travel thousands of miles in a day. They arrived at White Leaves City by dusk. Under the glow of the evening sun, White Leaves City sat in the middle of the field. It was indescribably peaceful. "We'll rest in the White Leaves Forest tonight and set off tomorrow," Lin Muyu said. "Okay. It's time to eat well and sleep well." "Yes." However, just before the two of them entered White Leaves City, they saw a notice posted outside the city wall. It was a wanted poster, and there was a drawing of Lin Muyu and Qin Yin. Unfortunately, the drawing was 2F*King different. As a result, no one recognized Lin Muyu and Qin Yin when they swaggered into the city. Chapter 534. The streets of Whiteleaf City were bustling with activity. As night fell, thousands of lanterns lit up the streets. Cultivators, mercenaries, and noble families from all over the continent appeared in Whiteleaf Forest. Most of them had come for the Forest of Heavenly Tomes. After all, whoever obtained a Heavenly Tomes might be able to become a marquis in the Iha Kingdom or the Empire. Lin Muyu and Qin Yin entered the city dressed as hunters. After finding an inn to stay in, they bought a new set of clothing. Qin Yin wore a plain dress embroidered with golden flowery patterns. Paired with her natural beauty, she looked like a fairy descending to the mortal world. Together with a robe made of animal hide, she looked like a young lady from a wealthy family. Lin Muyu, on the other hand, wore a green robe and carried a long sword on his back. He disguised himself as a bodyguard and even bought a fake beard to stick to his chin. When Lin Muyu grew a beard, Qin Yin couldn't help but smile at his appearance. Soon after, Lin Muyu prepared a mole for Qin Yin. It had to make her look different from the one on the wanted posters. In the end, Qin Yin stuck this mole below her eye. It looked like a tear-shaped mole, but after it was stuck, it made her look even more lovely. As expected, a superb skill like makeup was popular in any plane. At night, they sat by the window of the inn and ate dinner, tasting the unique flavor of White Leaf City's wine. A waiter served them a pot of fragrant wine and said, "This is our inn's specialty, 100 Leaves wine. Please enjoy." As he spoke, the waiter looked at Lin Muyu and Qin Yin's swords and couldn't help but ask, "Are the two of you also going to White Leaf Forest to find that forest of heavenly tomes?" "What's wrong?" Qin Yin asked. The waiter lowered his voice and said, "If the two of you really want to go to the White Leaves Forest, I advise you not to go. A few days ago, I heard that the second son of the Northern Qi Kingdom's capital, Bailing City, brought a group of people into the White Leaves Forest and was killed by a mysterious person. Not a single one of the hundreds of people he brought with him survived, including many experts and the Iha Kingdom's army." Lin Muyu pretended to be shocked. "The second son of Northern Qi is dead? When did you get the news?" "About 6 or 7 days ago, some mercenaries returned from the White Leaves Forest with the body of Northern Qi's second son, Huan. It is said that Northern Qi is furious and has mobilized thousands of men from the capital to enter the White Leaves Forest to avenge the second son." Qin Yin smiled. "It's getting more and more lively." The waiter said, "Miss and sir, if you do not insist on entering the White Leaves Forest, I advise you to give up. Right now, the White Leaves Forest is like a pot of hot soup. Most ants that crawl in will be scalded to death. Besides, I heard that there are ancient beasts guarding the treasures in the White Leaves Forest. It's too scary." Lin Muyu said, "Thank you for your kind intentions. In that case, my lady and I will not enter the White Leaves Forest." "Okay, then I will go." "Thank you." Lin Muyu raised her head and glanced at Qin Yin. She could read the amusement in Qin Yin's eyes. The White Leaves Forest was indeed dangerous, but not to that degree. At that moment, a few noblemen sitting at the table next to them began to chat. One of them, wearing a Sao red brocade robe, smiled and said, "These days, everyone is busy going to the White Leaves Forest. Not many people have paid attention to what's happening in Xiang City." "What's happening?" asked another nobleman in a green brocade robe. "Isn't that obvious?" The nobleman in the black brocade robe said, "In order to recruit talents, the Marquis of Xiang, Man Ning, has decided to hold a Heavenly Tome conference in Xiang City 3 days from now. There will be a total of 10,000 competition seats. Anyone who enters will have to register. Within 2 hours, the person who writes the highest grade of Heavenly Tome conference will be the champion of the conference. It is said that the champion will receive 8 million Jinin coins on the spot. He will also have the chance to marry the Marquis of Xiang's youngest daughter, Man Tingfang." "Man Tingfang?" The nobleman in the green brocade robe could not hold back and said excitedly, "I heard that Man Tingfang is a rare beauty in Xiang City. She is 18 years old, and she is good at music, chess, calligraphy, singing, and dancing. She is also very pretty with a slim waist and plump buttocks. She does not resemble her father at all. She has long been known as one of the 4 great beauties of Iha country. I wonder which family's nobleman has the fortune to marry Miss Man Tingfang." The nobleman in the red brocade robe raised his paper fan and cupped his fists. "The White Leaves Forest is filled with arrogant mercenaries and cultivators. With our abilities, even if we enter the White Leaves Forest, we will most likely not gain anything. Why don't we use our travel expenses to buy some weapon embryos and low-grade mysterious gold powder to try our luck in Xiang City? Who knows, we might become the Marquis' son-in-law." Very well, very well. We will listen to Brother Lu. Let's set off for Xiang City tomorrow morning. What do you think?" "All right." Lin Muyu heard everything from the side and could not help but be tempted. She said with a smile, "Xiao Yin, why don't we hurry to Xiang City and earn some money? It's 8 million Jin coins. Qin glared at him and said coquettishly, "Are you really not aiming for Man Tingfang?" "Why would I?" Lin Muyu held her little hand and said, "He ran away after getting the prize money for first place. With Man Ning's appearance, how good can his daughter be?" Qin could not help but laugh. "All right then. It's a waste to leave the 8 million Jin coins in Xiang City anyway. But the Marquis of Xiang is really rich. He was awarded 8 million Jin coins just for getting first place in the Heavenly Tome Conference. He is really rich. That's why we have to make a trip to Xiang City. We are robbing the rich to help the poor. Is that so?" Qin burst into laughter. Her beautiful eyes were like crescent moons. She said with a smile, "If Man Ning is rich, then who is poor?" "Me." Lin Muyu patted her chest and said in a low voice, "Xiao Yin should know that I have asked Xiling and the people from the Department of Weaponry to research the magic crystal cannon. It's too expensive. It's not enough without 1 or 200 million Jin coins." "Yes." Qin nodded gently. "If I didn't know about this, how could I still be the Empress? It's also because of this that I gave you the 10 million Jin coins from the Heavenly Tome Pavilion. It's just that, your research on the magic crystal cannon has always been kept a secret. I can't directly give it to you from the Ministry of Revenue. Also, this year's harvest is not too good, and expenses are high. The Ministry of Revenue doesn't have much money left." Lin Muyu said angrily, "You're still talking. How much money did you spend on the Heavenly Tome Pavilion? If all that money was given to me, I'm afraid the magic crystal cannon would have been completed long ago." Qin pouted. I didn't know that the Heavenly Tome Pavilion would spend so much money. It's all because Grandfather and His Highness the Seven Seas King urged us. However, the Heavenly Tome Pavilion is in charge of the Heavenly Tome inscriptions within the Empire. It's indispensable, so we must spend this money." "Yes." Lin Muyu picked up a piece of wild boar meat and put it into his mouth. He chewed for a while and swallowed it with a frown. This bacon's hardness was really unbearable. He looked up at Qin and said, "Xiao Yin, you've also comprehended a piece of the Heavenly Tome inscription. If you were given a high-grade tool embryo and mystic gold powder now, how confident are you that you'll be able to form a book?" Qin opened her small mouth. Her intelligent eyes were filled with uncertainty. She hummed and said, "The probability of becoming a book is not more than 1 in 1,000. The probability of becoming a heavenly tome is definitely not more than 1 in 100,000. Damn, Xiao Yin, you're too honest. What about Brother Yu? Where's the heavenly tome that you comprehended 4 types of laws?" "Me." Lin Muyu's mood swayed. He raised his hand and twirled his beard. He pretended to be profound and said with a smile, "If you give me high-grade mystic gold powder and a top-grade tool embryo, the probability of becoming a book should be about 20%. However, the probability of becoming a heavenly tome is about the same as yours, about 1 in 100,000. Heavenly tome is too profound and difficult to understand, but the probability of becoming an earthly tome is at least 50%. I wonder if an earthly tome can be exchanged for first place in the Heavenly Tome Conference. If it's a mid-grade earthly tome or above, then it's very possible." Qin pursed her lips and smiled. After all, there are very few people in Iha Kingdom who can write an earthly tome. Huan of Northern Qi is already a well-known figure among the younger generation of scholars. But as you can see, the highest level of heavenly tome that Huan of Northern Qi can write is only a low-grade earthly tome. If Brother Yu can write a mid-grade earthly tome, then this first place is certain to be yours." "Yes." Lin Muyu nodded and smiled. "Hurry and eat. After eating, go to sleep. Have a good night's rest. Tomorrow, we'll head to Xiang City. 2 days should be enough time to reach Xiang City." "Okay." After eating and drinking to her heart's content, Qin went to bed early. Lin Muyu hung the star's sword at her waist. Like the guards, she walked along the corridor of the inn to the rooftop. Using the spirit pulse technique, the strongest aura nearby was Qin Yin's domain. However, she was sound asleep at the moment, so the strength of the aura was not obvious. It was late at night, and there were fewer people on the streets of Whiteleaf City. Only a drunken mercenary and a cultivator were still walking leisurely on the streets, fighting at every turn. Their rough and disturbing roars could be heard in the night sky. "What are you looking at?" "So what if I'm looking at you?" Lin Muyu sat on the carved railing and smiled as she watched a few mercenaries fight with clumsy iron swords on the street in the distance. They were very careful, and the speed at which they stabbed their swords was shockingly slow, as if they were afraid of hurting their opponents. With one look, one could tell that they were just a bunch of weaklings showing off their strength. Not long after, a gong sounded, and a group of people dressed in patrolmen's uniforms appeared to maintain law and order. Immediately, a few of the drunk mercenaries were unhappy, and they began to curse that the patrolmen of Iha country were useless, that Marquis Manning was an old fool, and that Qin Yi was a hypocritical person who only cared about profit. Lin Muyu was very happy to hear this. Just like that, he sat on the railing and circulated the qi in his body. He cultivated the Vajra protection divine art and the dragon forging bone remnant scroll, and in the blink of an eye, he entered a dreamland. When he woke up, the sun was already rising. Chapter 535. After rushing for 2 days, they finally arrived at Sunset City the day before the Heavenly Tome Conference. However, when Lin Muyu and Qin Yin arrived at Sunset City, they found that it was overcrowded because of the Heavenly Tome Conference. All the inns were already full. Finally, Lin Muyu used her killer move, paying 3 times the room price, and finally checked into a medium-sized inn. At night, they left the inn and went to the local Heavenly Tome material store to purchase the necessary equipment, embryos and spiritual powder for the Heavenly Tome Conference. Sunset City was far more prosperous than Whiteleaf City. For safety's sake, Qin Yin wore a purple cloak, covering her beautiful face under the hood. Only when she raised her head could her beautiful eyes, which were like black gemstones, be seen. Lin Muyu's attire was even more safe. He changed from a handsome young man to a bearded uncle, and no one could recognize him. After entering a material shop at the corner of the street, an extremely fat shopkeeper came forward and said with a smile, "Looking at the elegant and extraordinary attire of the two of you, you must be famous scholars. Our shop has everything you need. As long as you want it, we have it. Please choose for yourselves." Lin Muyu said, "Shopkeeper, what kind of equipment embryos do you have here?" "Equipment embryos?" The shopkeeper chuckled and said, "You found the right place. Our store's equipment embryos can be said to be the most complete and best in Sunset City. We have everything from low-grade equipment embryos to supreme-grade equipment embryos. Let's take a look at the supreme-grade equipment embryos first." "Oh." The shopkeeper's eyes lit up. He thought to himself that a fat sheep had arrived. People who dared to directly say that they wanted to see supreme-grade equipment embryos must be rich. The bearded man in front of him must be the son of a wealthy family, just that he looked a little rough. "Young master, please take a look. Our store has a total of 2 supreme-grade equipment embryos." The shopkeeper held up a steel knife and a shield. He said, "This knife is made of 10,000-year black iron. The material is first-rate and has abundant spiritual power. It can greatly increase the chances of completing a book. The price is 200,000 Jianghu coins. This shield is made of black iron, and its spiritual power is slightly inferior. The price is 170,000 Jianghu coins." "Oh." Lin Muyu took the long blade and the shield and touched them lightly with her knuckles. A dang sound echoed continuously. The spiritual power of these 2 weapon embryos was indeed abundant, but it was definitely not worth such an expensive price. Thinking about it carefully, the star's sword hanging on Lin Muyu's waist was the real peerless weapon embryo. However, he didn't dare to inscribe a heavenly book on the star's sword without 100% confidence. If it didn't become a book, or it became a human book or spiritual book, it would be equivalent to writing something bad, and he would definitely cry to death. Forget it. Lin Muyu put down her sword and shield and said, "Can you show me the high-grade artifact embryo?" "Yes." The shopkeeper was a little disappointed. He didn't feel good about not being able to scam a big shot. He pointed to the counter at the side and said, "These are all high-grade tool embryos. They are priced between 2,000 and 700 Jianghu coins." Lin Muyu glanced at them and suddenly smiled. "Shopkeeper, tell me directly, which one is the 2,000 Jianghu coins embryo?" The shopkeeper's body trembled. He took out a fine steel wrist guard from the counter and said, "This pair of fine steel wrist guards is made from 10 million Xian steel. It's indestructible. This one only costs 2,000 Jianghu coins." "Alright, I'll take it." Lin Muyu laughed heartily. "Give me some low-grade Xian gold powder too." The shopkeeper was startled. This sir should also be participating in the Heavenly Book Conference. How can you be so confident that you can complete a book in one go? Why don't you choose a few more weapon embryos? The Heavenly Book Conference only has a time limit, but not a quantity limit. You can inscribe 7 or 8 weapon embryos in 2 hours. Why don't you buy a few more? These 2 days, many people have bought 2-digit weapon embryos in my store. No need. Lin Muyu smiled slightly. One is enough. Looking at his overflowing confidence and calmness, the shopkeeper couldn't help but tremble. He sighed to himself. This is 2F** King Stingy. Afterward, he spent a small amount of Xian gold powder. However, it wasn't until after he bought it that Lin Muyu remembered that Northern Shi Huan had actually given him some mid-grade Xian gold powder in his dimensional bag. The few hundred Jianghu coins he had spent earlier had been wasted. Qin Yin watched from the side as Lin Muyu shopped. She couldn't help but sigh. This brother of hers was too good at running a household. He was not just stingy. He was unwilling to spend money that he could avoid. However, he was never stingy when it came to developing the magic crystal cannons and equipping the valiant dragon army. Thinking of this, Qin Yin's heart warmed. After nightfall, Lin Muyu played with the wristband in his hand. He looked at it carefully and made up his mind. This wristband had a very small area for inscribing divine text. He had to reduce the number of words to about 500 words. This also meant that he couldn't inscribe a complete 1,000 words in the divine book. He had to reduce the divine book of the 4 great laws to 500 words or less. Thus, after spending half the night, Lin Muyu had reduced the divine book of the fire laws, Fire God Extinguishes the World, to 500 words. He had removed some long passages and kept some key words. He didn't know if he could make it into a book, so he could only put it together. The next day, he woke up early and checked out of the room with Qin Yin. They led the 2 war horses straight to the Heavenly Tome Conference. The Heavenly Tome Conference was held in the Hall of Heavenly Tome at the side of the Sunset Temple. The Hall of Heavenly Tome was the number 1 department of Heavenly Tome in the Swift White Province, personally approved by Commander Qin Yi. It had the same status as the Heavenly Tome Pavilion in the North Ridge Province. The plaza of the Hall of Heavenly Tome was already filled with tens of thousands of tables for the participants to use. When Lin Muyu and Qin Yin rushed to the periphery, they saw a sea of people. Qin Yin was a little worried. "Brother Yu, let's hurry and sign up. Otherwise, the quota will be full, okay?" Lin Muyu said, "Let's sign up separately." "Okay." Qin Yin took the lead and squeezed into the crowd. He slowly released a little pressure from his body and pushed the surrounding people away, allowing him to successfully reach a group of examiners. After spending 10 Jianghu coins to sign up, he received a bamboo stick with his name and participation number written on it. Of course, the name was written as Lin Yin, a very ordinary name. It was only when Qin Yin came out that Lin Muyu squeezed into the crowd. An examiner raised his head and squinted at him. He asked, "What's your name? What's your identity? Where are you from?" Lin Muyu blurted out, "My name is Li Laifu. I'm from the eastern border of the Swift White Province. I'm the Li Residence's protector." "Li Residence's protector?" The examiner laughed loudly. A mere protector dares to participate in the Heavenly Tome Conference? What a joke. Give me 10 Jin coins and I'll write your name on it. Yes. After Lin Muyu handed over the gold coins, the examiner waved his brush and wrote 4 words on it: Li Residence's protector, Li Laifu. Dang 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 dang, the gong sounded noisily, and an examiner yelled at the top of his lungs, the Heavenly Tome Conference is about to begin. Participants, please return to your seats. Those who have completed a book, please come to the main examiner's office to register within 2 hours. 10,000 people were inscribing a Heavenly Tome together. It was a spectacular sight. Meanwhile, Lin Muyu and Qin Yin's tables were about 50 meters apart. Through the crowd, Qin Yin smiled sweetly at him. Lin Muyu gave her a thumbs up to encourage her. The materials Qin Yin used were all of the best quality. Logically speaking, she should be able to compete for a place. Marquis Sunset has arrived. A fat figure appeared in the Heavenly Tome Hall's main hall. It was Marquis Sunset, Man Ning. Lin Muyu looked at him from afar. Man Ning seemed to be fatter and older, but the cunning gleam in his eyes did not change. Dozens of guards with extraordinary cultivation surrounded Man Ning's fat body. Not far away, the figure of a high-ranking general of the country of nominal peace also appeared. It was Ding Shi. Lin Muyu never thought that she would see Ding Shi here. He wouldn't recognize her, would he? She quickly lowered her cultivation aura to the minimum, then lowered her head and did not look up. Not far away, Qin Yin did the same. It would be strange if Ding Shi could recognize her in the examination hall of tens of thousands of people. Man Ning raised his hand and gestured. Immediately, the main examiner stood up and said loudly, "The competition begins. The time limit is 2 hours." The young masters and ladies in the competition hall were moved. One by one, they took out their tool embryos and placed them at the side. They began to write with flying dragons and dancing phoenixes, but soon, the sound of sighs became one. In nearly half an hour, no one could write a book. It could be seen how difficult it was to write a heavenly tome. Lin Muyu carefully sat cross-legged in the same place. He used mid-grade black gold powder to write oracle bone script characters that were almost indistinguishable to the naked eye on the black steel wristband. He was so focused that he did not look at the progress of the other participants. He also did not notice that a few young masters he had met in Whiteleaf City a few days ago were sitting at the tables beside him. However, a few of the young masters recognized Lin Muyu. They could not help but laugh mockingly. "Isn't this the guard who accompanied the beautiful young mistress in Whiteleaf City to drink and eat meat? This kind of idiot actually dares to participate in the Heavenly Tome Conference. He is simply asking to be humiliated. If he can write a book, I will eat sh*t." The red embroidered young master's brush suddenly flew up and shot into the sky. It was a light green brilliance. He could not help but be overjoyed. "Aha, I've written a book. It's a low-grade spiritual book." The bystanders all cast envious gazes at him. Not long after, a few more people wrote books, but they were all human books. Lin Muyu was still focused on writing on the black steel wristband in his hands. The surface of the wristband was suffused with a faint golden light. To be able to write so small was also a kind of ability. At this moment, many of the young masters had already turned their gazes to the front. They saw a beautiful young lady dressed in luxurious clothing sitting there. She had a delicate face, beautiful eyebrows, and bright eyes. She was a young lady who was full of spirit. The spiritual brush in her hand was constantly waving, writing the marks of the black gold powder on a shield. She looked very focused. The green embroidered young master at the side was enchanted. "Oh my God, is that the #1 beauty of Sunset City, Man Tingfang? As expected, she is as beautiful as a jade carving. If I can get first place, will I be able to marry her?" Man Tingfang seemed to have heard the young master's words. She immediately looked back, her beautiful eyes filled with disgust. This was an incomparably cold and arrogant young lady. Chapter 536. Swoosh! A rich orange light shot into the sky from the arena. It was another heavenly book that attracted the power of heaven and earth. Furthermore, it was a superior grade spiritual book. The first spiritual book in the arena was actually a superior grade spiritual book. The short sword that became the carrier of the spiritual book was slowly placed on the table. The creator was a young man of about 27 or 28 years old. He slowly stood up and cried tears of joy to the sky. It's a book, a book. It's a superior grade spiritual book. Father, do you see it? Your child has become a book. I didn't disgrace my ancestors. The time for our Sikong family to rise again has come. Before he could finish crying, another orange beam of light shot into the sky beside him. Swoosh! It was another heavenly book that attracted the power of heaven and earth. The light was even more intense. It should be a superior grade spiritual book. The girl beside the spiritual book stood up slowly. It was Man Tingfang. She walked to the examiner's table with an exquisite shield and said with a smile, "Father, your daughter has written a superior grade spiritual book." Man Ning was gratified and said with a smile, "You are indeed my daughter. Fang Air, come and sit beside father. Examiner, please register Fang Air." Yes. The examiner nodded. Ding Shi cupped his fists and said with a smile, "Congratulations to Miss Fang for writing a superior grade spiritual book. Logically speaking, Miss Fang is likely to be the champion of this heavenly book conference, right?" The corner of Man Tingfang's mouth rose. She said with a smile, "Thank you, Marshal Ding Shi, for your kind words. However, there are many capable people in this heavenly book conference. Perhaps there are people more powerful than Fang Air." Although Man Tingfang spoke very modestly, her eyes were already filled with arrogance. In her eyes, the 10,000 participants of the Heavenly Book Conference had already become losers. If it wasn't for the inappropriate occasion, she would have already put her snow-white legs on the table. Ding Shi smiled without saying anything. The youngest daughter of the Sunset Marquis, Man Ning, had been spoiled and pampered since young. He had suffered greatly from Man Tingfang's domineering and unruly ways. Rays of light flew out one after another in the arena, but the books that were written were all human books, so it was no longer strange. As long as a scholar entered the Heavenly Book Hall, even the worst one would be able to write a human book. This kind of person could only be called a talent, but not a genius. At this moment, a ray of light shot into the sky from the arena. It was an earthy yellow light that shot into the sky. Book of the Earth. The first Earth book appeared, although it was only a low-grade Earth book. Just like Man Tingfang, the author was also a young woman. However, she wore a dark purple cloak, and her face was hidden under the hood. She slowly stood up, held the artifact embryo, and came before the chief examiner. She handed over her bamboo stick, but the artifact embryo was still kept by herself. Otherwise, it would become the Heavenly Book Hall usurping the Heavenly Book. After all, if they wanted to collect this local book, they had to pay a certain price. The examiner looked up, but Qin Yin had already turned around. The moment Qin Yin turned around, Man Tingfang saw the peerless beauty under the cloak. In an instant, Man Tingfang was dumbfounded. She mumbled, "Impossible. This is absolutely impossible." Man Ning furrowed his brows and said, "Fang, what's impossible? There's always someone better than you, and there's always someone better out there. For someone to be able to write an earthly book, it's naturally because of his ability." Man Tingfang still shook her head. "Impossible. There's definitely no one more beautiful than me." Ding Shi vomited blood at the side. This Man Tingfang's attention was completely different, but it was very rare for a woman to be more beautiful than Man Tingfang. Ding Shi really couldn't think of any other woman in Sunset City who could be more beautiful than Man Tingfang, and even make her admit it herself. Man Tingfang's beautiful face was filled with pain. She couldn't accept all of this. A woman who was more beautiful than her was actually able to inscribe a heavenly book of a higher grade than her. Where was the justice in this world? For a moment, Man Tingfang's heart was filled with emotions. Since there's a you, why should there be a yang? There's still half an incense stick of time until the end of the competition. An examiner with a louder voice shouted. Lin Muyu was still fully focused on inscribing the divine text on the mystic steel wrist guard. On the side, a group of young masters had already given up on the idea of writing a book, but they still tirelessly teased Lin Muyu, who in their eyes was a rough and burly man. Humph, you actually wrote so many words. The young master in green had a look of disdain on his face. Do you think you can write a book with so many words? Ha ha ha, you idiot, if you can write a book, I'll eat sheep dung. The young master in yellow laughed heartily. This wrist guard looks ordinary, but you actually used mid-grade mystic gold powder to inscribe. This guy must be crazy. If you can write a spiritual book, oh no, if you can write an earthly book, I'll eat dog dung in front of everyone, ha ha ha. The young man in red laughed even more savagely. You little brat, if you can write it into a book, I will go to the stables and buy a giant elephant in front of everyone. I will watch the elephant poop. As long as it can poop, no matter how big it is, I will eat it all. What do you think? Lin Muyu remained silent and continued to inscribe the heavenly book. A few minutes later, just as the incense stick was about to burn out, Lin Muyu also finished writing the last 4 words on the wrist guard. Fire God destroys the world. The divine text indeed responded, and the golden light shone brightly. The next moment, the words condensed into a rich yellow light that shot up into the sky. It was another earthly book, and judging from the intensity of the light, it was a top-grade earthly book. Oh my God! Man Tingfang was so shocked that he stood up from his seat. He rubbed his eyes and said, "How is this possible? How can such a big beard write a top-grade earthly book?" Lin Muyu stood up and looked at the mystic steel wrist guard in satisfaction. There was a faint flame on it. This was a top-grade earthly book on the law of fire. He raised his head and looked in the direction of the young masters, who was the one who said he wanted to eat dog dung in a variety of ways. Swoosh, 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 the young masters ran away in a flash, and Lin Muyu couldn't help but feel a little annoyed. People these days had no trust at all. Holding the top-grade earthly book and walking forward, Lin Muyu pinched his throat and said in a strange voice, "Sir, I'm done. This is my bamboo stick, please help me register it." "Yes, yes. Young master." The chief examiner's face was full of respect. He knew that the person who wrote a top-grade earthly book would most likely be summoned by the commander soon, and might even be listed as a noble. This kind of person could not be offended. Man Ning also stood up, cupped his fists, and said with a smile, "This young master wrote a top-grade earthly book in one go. It's a blessing for my Sunset City, a blessing for my Iha country." "Chief Examiner, what's this young master's name?" The chief examiner was surprised. "Young master is Li Residence Protector." "Li Residence Protector?" Man Ning frowned, then immediately smiled and said, "Young master is truly an outstanding talent." Lin Muyu nodded, and said, "Is the ranking out?" The incense had already burned out, and Man Ning nodded. "Chief Examiner, please announce the ranking." "Yes, Marquis." The chief examiner walked forward with the scroll in hand, and announced in a clear voice, "First place of the Heavenly Book Conference, Li Residence Protector Li Laifu. Second place of the Heavenly Book Conference, Lin Yin. Third place of the Heavenly Book Conference, Miss Man Tingfang." "I don't want." Man Tingfang looked at Lin Muyu's bearded face, and couldn't help but take a few steps back. She grabbed Marquis Xiang's hand and said, "Father, this person is so ugly. I don't want him, I don't want to marry him." Man Ning frowned. "Fang, don't be stubborn, you should listen to your parents when it comes to marriage. This young Master Li has both integrity and talent, you will naturally understand his good qualities in the future. Servants, prepare a banquet in the Sunset Hall. I want to invite the Li Residence Protector Li, Miss Lin Yin, and the top 10 scholars today." "Yes, Marquis." "No, I don't want." Man Tingfang's voice was very loud, and she turned around to enter the Heavenly Book Hall, extremely stubborn. Man Ning felt a little helpless, and cupped his fists. "I'm very sorry, young Master Li, my daughter has always been unruly and willful, but..." I will definitely persuade her to marry you. This is the promise of the Heavenly Book Conference. Lin Muyu said respectfully, Marquis, may I ask when the rewards will be distributed? Oh. Man Ning couldn't help but laugh, and immediately said, Chief Examiner, please give young Master Li and Miss Lin the corresponding gold tickets. Yes. The Chief Examiner walked forward and presented the prepared gold tickets. Lin Muyu received 80 gold tickets worth 100,000 each, and Qin Yin received 20. This time, the two of them had earned a total of 10 million Jin dollars. The Sunset Hall began to prepare for the noon banquet, while Lin Muyu and Qin Yin looked at each other and smiled. The money was already in their hands, it was time to slip away. The Heavenly Book Conference was very complicated, and it was not difficult to slip away. Lin Muyu suddenly activated the Holy King realm to suppress a few guards, and immediately blended into the crowd with Qin Yin. They found a war horse in the periphery, and the two of them leaped onto the horse and rode straight to the north gate of Sunset City. There were not many people in the alleyway, it seemed that everyone had gone to watch the Heavenly Book Conference. However, they had not gone far when they suddenly heard the sound of horse hooves in front of them. A group of Iha Nation cavalry, led by a young girl, rushed over. That young girl was Man Tingfang. Oh no. Qin Yin whispered, has our identity been exposed? Not necessarily. Lin Muyu said calmly, let's go and see what she has to say. Man Tingfang pointed a finger in the distance and said, that bearded man, you actually used a trick to write a top-grade Earth book, what a despicable person. This young lady will never marry someone as despicable as you. Men, capture him, I want to interrogate him properly. The guard at the side looked helpless. Miss Fang, if we disrespect the Heavenly Book Conference's champion, we won't be able to bear the Marquis's wrath. Man Tingfang gritted her teeth. A bunch of trash. If you don't do it, I'll do it myself. As she said that, Man Tingfang suddenly pulled out a thin sword and urged her horse to charge over. Lin Muyu could not help but find it funny. She urged her horse forward, a faint ruler's battle flame circulating in her palm. Just as Man Tingfang pulled out her sword, her palm gently flipped, and a suction force wrapped around the sword's blade. With a sudden tug, Man Tingfang fell from her battle horse. However, at the same time, she reached out and grabbed Lin Muyu's fake beard. With a swoosh, she pulled the fake beard down and dropped it to the ground. Man Tingfang looked up and saw that Lin Muyu had transformed into an incomparably handsome young man after losing his beard. Moreover, a faint ruler's battle flame was enshrouding his body. One look and it was obvious that his cultivation was not ordinary. In an instant, Man Tingfang's heart was in a mess, and her face turned red. She said, You're not allowed to leave. The champion of the Heavenly Book Conference must marry me. Lin Muyu looked at her with a smile and said something that made everyone burst out laughing. I don't want to. Qin Yin giggled and urged her horse forward. She tugged on Takshu's reins and galloped toward the north gate with Lin Muyu. Man Tingfang looked up in the direction that Lin Muyu and Qin Yin had disappeared. Her pretty face was full of unwillingness. She whimpered in pain and said, no matter where you run to, I will catch you and bring you back to marry me. Just you wait. Chapter 537. Father. Man Tingfang's drawn-out coquettish voice was heard in the Sunset Hall as she raised her bruised elbow and said, that person ran away and even injured my daughter. Father, you must seek justice for me. Man Ning trembled as he held his daughter's injured elbow and his face was suddenly filled with murderous intent. Man Tingfang was the pearl of his palm and since young, she was always held in his hands and feared to fall and held in his mouth for fear of melting. When had she ever suffered such a serious injury? Suddenly, Man Ning gritted his teeth and said, Scoundrel, who is it that injured my Feng to this state? Sunset Army Cavalry, prepare to assemble. Kill him. Father. Man Tingfang anxiously stomped her feet and said, Daughter did not ask you to kill him. I only asked you to capture him back, then what? Man Ning was confused. Then. Man Tingfang's face was flushed red as she said, then according to the agreement of the Tianshu conference, my engagement with him, what did you say? Man Ning's body trembled. The first place of the Tianshu conference, the Li residence's guard, ran away? Yes, he ran away with the second place, Lin Yin. How can this be? Man Ning flew into a rage as the fats on his fat body trembled. Someone, immediately send an order to Marshal Ding Shi to send out the army to search for those two people. Send a letter to inform the steel walls to investigate these two people. We must not let the Li residence's inner courtyard, who holds the Earth Book, leave the swift white province. He is my man. Yes, Marquis. The steel walls had long been reopened and there was an endless stream of merchants coming and going. Before the Marquis of the Sunset Sun's letter arrived, Lin Muyu and Qin Yin had already arrived at the steel walls and easily crossed the city walls as merchants. Just as Lin Muyu and Qin Yin crossed the steel walls, suddenly a captaincy on the wall raised his spear and shouted, "The two of you, stop right there and turn back." How could Lin Muyu turn back? She pulled Takshu's reins and smiled. Xiao Yin, leave at full speed. All right. Qin Yin readily agreed. The two warhorses galloped away, and Captaincy, who was on the city wall, had a furious expression. These two people are the first and second place of the Heavenly Book Conference. Men, get on your horses immediately and capture them. Humph, I, Ding San, will never let such talents leave Sunset City. The sound of horse hooves could be heard from behind. The Iha kingdom had already sent out quite a number of light cavalry. Moreover, there was the sound of eagle cries coming from the sky. These must be the falcons that the Iha kingdom had raised for hunting and tracking. Oh no, we might not be able to escape, Qin Yin said worriedly. I won't. Lin Muyu smiled confidently. She patted the dark steel bracer on her right wrist and said, have you forgotten that we have a superb heavenly book? Now it's time to see the power of a superb heavenly book. As she spoke, she activated the power of the heavenly book with a thought. A khaki-colored power of the heavens and earth descended from the sky and shone on Lin Muyu's bracer. The next moment, as Lin Muyu activated her thoughts, the sky suddenly turned blood red. Immediately, a fiery red rain began to fall. However, it was not cold rain, but a scorching rain of fire. The boiling lava acted as the rain and sizzled as it fell on the ground. Flames rose tens of meters into the air, directly sealing off the area of a few hundred meters outside the steel gate. Oh my God! On the city wall, the captaincy insignia on Ding San's collar was illuminated by the fiery red light. He said in shock, Is that the power of a superb heavenly book? How terrifying. Men, don't chase after him. This person has no intention of staying in Sunset City. Maybe this kind of genius doesn't stick to one pattern and doesn't want to be bound by others. The Chiliarch at the side murmured, then General. What about Marshal Ding's order? This is a mission that we can't complete. There's no other way. Send out a letter and order Fire Moon City, Star End City, Red Soil City and other cities to send out scouts. Capture him if you can. Yes. Looking at the raging flames behind her, Lin Muyu couldn't help but laugh out loud. The power of the heavenly book was indeed extraordinary. A superb heavenly book could actually cause disaster in a radius of nearly 300 meters. If it was a heavenly book, it might be able to cause a fire attack in a radius of 1 to 2 miles. It could be imagined that if both sides were in a battle formation and the other side suddenly used a heavenly book with the power of a heavenly book, the result would be unimaginable. Just imagine, what would happen if a fire god destroyer fell into the Jianghu battle formation of tens of thousands of pure steel armors? Thinking of this, Lin Muyu couldn't help but feel a little heavy. After thinking for a while, she couldn't help but take out the white cloth that Ling Shu had left for her. This white cloth was a heavenly book of the law of space. This heavenly book could very likely summon the golden protective wall that Ling Shu had used before. The huge protective wall could protect the people within the range from harm. Perhaps to resist the destructive heavenly book, this kind of protective wall was needed. It seemed like she had to learn the heavenly book of the law of space. Only those who could plan ahead and make good decisions would be able to win the battle of the heavenly book in the future. In order to reunite the empire, Lin Muyu could be said to have put in a lot of effort. The two warhorses galloped quickly in the direction of star-piercing city. Ever since the Battle of the Wildfire Plains drowned the demon race's Qianfeng army, the demon race was forced to leave the humans' territory step by step. Dozens of cities in the northern border of the Swift White Province were also recovered, and star-piercing city once again showed signs of prosperity. Looking from afar, one could see an endless stream of commoners and merchants entering and leaving the city. Are we going into the city? Qin Yin smiled. It was currently winter, and the cold wind caused her black hair to sway. No need. Lin Muyu shook her head and said, "We're only a day's journey away from Black Pine Pass, so let's not rest anymore. Xiao Yin, I'll have to trouble you. Once we reach Black Pine Pass tonight, we'll be safe. At least we won't be threatened by the Yihan nation anymore." Yes, yes. Not long after, heavy snow began to fall from the sky. It was simply one disaster after another, but fortunately, Lin Muyu and Qin Yin had enough clothes on them. They only needed to wrap themselves in a leather robe and they could continue their journey. With the cover of the snow, they believed that the Yihan nation's soldiers would not be able to catch up to them. They only needed to follow the Yihan nation's official road to the north and they would be able to reach Black Pine Pass. Until late at night, the two warhorses were so tired that they were snorting in the snow. However, not far ahead was the Qinling Mountains, and they could even see the lights of Black Pine Pass swaying in the wind and snow. We're almost there. Qin Yin was a little happy. After running for so long, she was already extremely tired. Yes. Lin Muyu brushed the snow off her shoulders and felt the cold wind blowing on her face like a knife. Qin Yin, who was beside her, was like a beautiful elf wrapped in snow. Her curved eyebrows and eyelashes were covered in snow, and the outside of her leather robe was covered in frost. It was too unfair for the Imperial Highness of the Empire to accompany her in this kind of suffering. Fortunately, Qin Yin did not seem to mind. As long as she was with Lin Muyu, she did not care about suffering. Moreover, after experiencing so much, Qin Yin's state of mind had already matured a lot. How could an expert become stronger without going through experience? Unknowingly, Qin Yin's ambition was no longer to become the emperor, but to step into the divine realm. After all, the latter ambition was even greater. Be careful. Lin Muyu looked at the flickering flames in front and said, "There's the Yihan nation's army." Yes. Less than 5 miles away from Mo Song Pass, there was a checkpoint set up by the side of the road, and there were camps by the side of the road. The Yihan nation had stationed at least tens of thousands of troops here to prevent the Imperial Army from Mo Song Pass from the south. Thinking about it, there were constant small conflicts between the Empire and the Yihan nation. How could Ding Shi let down his guard here? Tuck, 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 the sound of hooves could be heard in the curtain of snow, and hundreds of Yihan nation's armored cavalry rushed over in the flickering torches. Some were holding torches, while others pulled out their steel swords. The centurion in the lead said coldly, "Who are you? Don't you know that the pass is sealed at night? Go back immediately. All merchants are only allowed to enter Mo Song Pass during the day." Qin Yin urged her horse forward slowly, and said in a very ethereal voice, "Sir, we have already come this far. If we go back, I'm afraid the horses will not be able to keep up. There is no place for us to stay within dozens of miles. I'm afraid my brother and I will freeze to death in the snow." The centurion raised his eyebrows and said, "So what if you freeze to death? That's your business. Anyway, this place has entered the night martial law. You two go back immediately, or you will be killed." "Is that so?" Lin Muyu urged her horse forward slowly and suddenly raised her palm. Immediately, the king's fighting flame soared, and an invisible domain pressed down. The group of Yihan nation's armored cavalry stood there dumbfounded, unable to move. "All right, let's go." Lin Muyu smiled. For a saint-level combatant to pass through 100 ordinary soldiers was simply too easy. Takshu let out a long neigh and galloped forward. Lin Muyu raised his hand and pulled out his star's sword. He easily split the staghorn wood that served as a roadblock into two, and disappeared into the curtain of snow with Qin Yin. This level of obstruction was like child's play to him. After nearly 2 minutes, the group of Iha Nation's soldiers finally woke up from the shock of the coercion. However, their meridians were numb, and they could not help but rub their joints and blood vessels. All of their faces were pale. The centurion asked doubtfully, "What happened just now? Was it the coercion of the sanctuary?" "Yes." A 10-man squad leader said respectfully, "That person must be a sanctuary powerhouse," and he went straight to Ink Pine Pass. "He should be a cultivator from the Empire." "Humph, the Empire's cultivators are getting more and more arrogant. Forcefully breaking through the pass. I really don't know if Marshal Ding Shi's decision to restore the trade between the North and the South is right or wrong." The 10-man squad leader said resentfully, "Marshal Ding Shi is farsighted. Moreover, if we don't restore the trade, I'm afraid it'll be difficult for us to obtain the rich minerals and resources from Lingbei. Lingbei province's iron ore is the best in the world, and Lingbei is rich in fish and rice. Our minerals are far inferior to Lingbei's, so there's nothing we can do about it." Sigh, the centurion looked at the Qinling Mountains, and his eyes lit up. He clenched his fists and said, "I really hope to see the Iha Nation's warriors pull themselves together in my lifetime. We'll cross the Qinling Mountains and sweep away the corrupt and brutal empire, saving the people from the abyss of suffering." The 10-man squad leader was just an old soldier, and there was a smile in his old eyes. He said, "Who knows? The black and white sides of the world have confused many people." The centurion was stunned. He had no idea what the 10-man squad leader was talking about, but his face hurt from the cold wind. He quickly sheathed his sword and rubbed his hands. "Let's go back to the camp. It's freezing outside. It seems like the snow won't stop tonight." "Yes." Chapter 538. In the camp of the garrison of Xiang City, the cold wind blew in through the gap of the commander's tent, causing the candlelight to flicker. "Marshal, rest early," the guard said respectfully. "It's okay." Ding Shi's eyes were fixed on the scroll in his hand. The words recorded on the scroll were the military book left by Xiang Wentian, the military god. It was a page about the Qingquan battle formation. Feng Jixing launched the Qingquan battle formation with 60,000 troops and stopped the armor demon in the Unicorn Forest. It was a miracle. In the records of the battles between humans and demons, there were 2 large-scale field battles. One was when Long Qianlin used the Iron Chain Horse tactic to fight the Thunder Chong Legion and lost more than half of his troops. The other was when Feng Jixing used the Qingquan battle formation to fight the armor demon Legion of the Demons. In a sense, Feng Jixing's tactic was more successful than Long Qianlin's. If he could use the Qingquan battle formation more skillfully, he might be able to defeat the demons with this tactic. Voila, the tent was opened and Ding Senging walked in covered with snow. He took off his battle robe and handed it to the attendant. He walked straight to Ding Shi, glanced at the scroll in Ding Shi's hand and said with a smile, "Marshal is still thinking about the Qingquan battle formation?" "Yes." Ding Shi rubbed his temples. His face was full of fatigue as he said, "Qian Feng and Lei Chong will definitely not let the matter rest after their defeat in the Wildfire Plains. The demons will make a comeback sooner or later. What are the chances of our Iha country winning? Long Qianlin's arrow chest and third-rate white diamond arrowheads? I really don't know if those white diamond arrowheads can really penetrate the armor of the armor demon," as Long Qianlin said. Ding Senging said, "The commander-in-chief relies heavily on Long Qianlin, Yi Xuanhuan, and the others. He gave most of the military power of the Iha country to these 2 people, leaving less than 60,000 men and horses for Marshal Ding. Which soldier of the empire doesn't feel injustice for Marshal Ding? But now, Marshal Ding is still racking his brains for the safety of Iha country. Why do you have to do this?" "Ha ha ha, I, Ding Shi, am not a narrow-minded person. Commander, weakening my military power must have its uses, but Commander still left 60,000 troops for me. This is enough. Third watch, after this heavy snow stops, reorganize the troops. I want to drill them in the Qingquan battle formation. Yes, Marshal. By the way, have you chased after the champion of the Heavenly Book Conference? No. Ding San felt even more helpless as he said, this general really doesn't understand. This young master of the Heavenly Tome Conference's champion had the opportunity to marry the incomparably beautiful young lady Man Tingfang, so why did he refuse? Ding Shi couldn't help but laugh. Third Miss has always been unruly and willful. Perhaps there is a reason why she ran away. Anyway, if it were me, I would also run away, ha ha ha. Ding Senging sat down and said, Commander Ding, you're still in the mood to joke around here. We didn't manage to chase down the champion of the Heavenly Book Gathering and let such a talent escape. The Sunset Marquis will definitely blame us. Commander Ding, you'd better think about how to deal with the Marquis. Deal with the Marquis? Ding Shi laughed. The generals of Sunset City are all pot-bellied and mediocre. After the Battle of Lanyan City, they've long lost their will to fight and only know how to enjoy themselves. In the entire Swift White Province, if I, Ding Shi, don't lead troops, who will? Don't worry, the Marquis won't do anything to me. Third watch, how did the champion and second place escape? Logically speaking, the light cavalry stationed within the steel walls are all top-notch horses. There's no reason they couldn't catch up. Ding San cupped his fists and said, just as we were about to give chase, the champion used the top-quality earth tome he had just carved and activated the power of heaven and earth. Nearly 300 meters of fire rain blocked the exit of the steel walls, so we had no way of giving chase. A 300-meter range of fire rain? Ding Shi couldn't help but be stunned. How is that possible? I've seen the people of Northern Qi use the heavenly tome. That time, the middle-quality earth tome only summoned a 20-meter range of fire rain. Although his top-quality earth tome is strong, it shouldn't be that much stronger, right? That. I don't know. Ding Shi clenched his fists and said, for such a talent to leave Swift White Province is truly a pity. Send more people out to search. Let's hope he'll change his mind and be willing to marry the third Mississippi. In truth, there's nothing wrong with the third Miss, just that her temper is bad. Her character and knowledge are both good, and she's fresh and beautiful. Ah, this Li Manor Protector is really too confusing. Could it be, because he once offended the second son of Northern Qi, he fled to escape punishment? That shouldn't be. Ding San sat there on his knees, not knowing how to interrupt. He just looked at Ding Shi and muttered to himself. At Ink Pine Pass, the curtain of snow blocked one's line of sight. Visibility was no more than 50 meters, but when Lin Muyu and Qin Yin arrived at the gates, there were still people above who saw them. A general raised a long knife and asked, "Who are you, old man?" Ink Pine Pass is under martial law at night. No one is allowed to enter. Please return. Lin Muyu walked forward and took out her general's token from her bosom. She held it high and said, "Look at this, then decide if you want to open the gates and let us in." Oh. The general raised his torch and looked at it from afar. He saw that the golden token glowed with a golden light, but he couldn't see the words clearly. But looking at the shape, it was indeed the token of an imperial general. Immediately, his whole body trembled. He said to the guards beside him, "Take a few dozen people with me to take a look. This person looks like he's no ordinary person." "Yes, General." A few minutes later, the iron gates opened with a creak. The cold wind outside immediately poured into the pass, and a group of imperial soldiers walked out. The centurion walked forward respectfully and took a look at Lin Muyu's token. Immediately, he was scared out of his wits. He quickly knelt on one knee and saluted, saying, "This general greets Commander Yu." "Commander Yu?" The group of imperial soldiers was dumbfounded. They looked at each other and quickly understood. Within the empire, there was only one person who could be called Commander Yu, and that was Lin Muyu, who had defeated the Qianfeng Corps in the Wildfire Plains. she was an imperial general who was on the same level as Feng Jixing. Very soon, the group of soldiers knelt down one after another. The snow on the ground melted a little, and immediately wet their knees. Lin Muyu raised her hand. Get up, don't stand on ceremony. Let's enter the pass first. Arrange 2 warm rooms for me and have someone make some delicious food. Understood? Yes, Commander. The centurion stood up, but his gaze fell on Qin Yin, who was beside Lin Muyu. Under the illumination of the torch, this young lady was very beautiful, and her identity was obvious. Everyone knew who Lin Muyu was. If this young lady wasn't the princess of the 7 seas, Tang Xiaoxi, then she should be the current empress. For a moment, the centurion was so excited that he almost fainted. Many imperial soldiers might not even get to see the empress once in their entire lives. However, it was very likely that he would be in close contact with the empress only 2 meters away. This was a great honor. Commander, who is this young lady? He couldn't help but ask. However, Lin Muyu said, don't ask what you shouldn't. Don't make it public. Yes. This centurion also had some information and knew that Princess She had been in charge of Lanyan City for the past half a month. Rumor had it that the Empress, Qin Yin, was in seclusion. Based on this deduction, the identity of this young lady in front of him had been confirmed. He immediately cupped his fists respectfully, bowed deeply to Qin Yin, and said, please enter the pass. It was warm inside Imo Song Pass. Lin Muyu and Qin Yin's rooms were arranged on the 3rd floor of the pass. There was a small window facing Lingnan, and one could faintly see the fire in the wind and snow. There was a heater in the room, and it was very warm. Lin Muyu helped Qin Yin take off her cloak and shook off the snow on it. Meanwhile, Qin Yin moved forward and smiled as she helped Lin Muyu untie the belt of her leather robe. At the side, the 3 Kiliarchs who were guarding Imo Song Pass were dumbfounded. They had already guessed Qin Yin's identity, so they didn't dare to say anything in the face of such a heartless display of affection and could only endure it. After Lin Muyu sat down, she glanced at their military insignia. There was a small insignia of Qihai City below it. This group of people were all generals under Tang Lan. It seemed that the defensive line around the Qinling Mountains was once again under Tang Lan's control. This couldn't be helped. After all, Lin Muyu had only joined the imperial army for 4 to 5 years, while Tang Lan had been in control of the army for as long as 40 years. This kind of accumulation of deep roots couldn't be changed in a short period of time. After asking a few questions about the defense of Mo Song Pass, Lin Muyu ordered them to leave and not to wait on her. Then, they ate the food that the soldiers brought. It was very delicious, and they didn't dare to be negligent. There was meat and vegetables for this meal. Presumably, to the soldiers, being able to eat such a meal was no different from celebrating a festival. The snow stopped the next day, but at a glance, thousands of miles of mountains and rivers were covered in snow. It was a very magnificent sight. After Lin Muyu and Qin Yin finished breakfast, they prepared to set off. Qin Yin changed into a snow-white leather robe embroidered with a faint golden-purple flower pattern. Immediately, there was a huge change in her aura. As for Lin Muyu, he wore the white robe of the Imperial Army, which made the group of soldiers once again confirm his identity. There were 500 cavalrymen from Mo Song Pass to escort them back to Lanyan City, so that they could take care of each other along the way. Lin Muyu had a pile of treasures in her arms, so she had to be careful. When they passed by Buga City, she mobilized 500 cavalrymen, and when they passed by Cold Star City, she mobilized another 1,000 cavalrymen. When they entered the North Ridge province 2 days later, she already had an army of 3,000 cavalrymen. As for this army, Lin Muyu didn't want to return it. Instead, she asked Qin Yin to directly leave an imperial edict, and these 3,000 cavalrymen were directly added to the Dragon Guard battalion and handed over to Wei Chou for training. On one hand, it could weaken Tang Lan's forces in the Earth Star province, and on the other hand, it could slightly strengthen the Dragon Guard battalion. Chapter 539. After returning to Lanyan City, the first thing Lin Muyu did was to write down a complete volume of the divine tomes of the laws of fire, wind, lightning, and life based on her memory. However, there was only one volume, and it was kept by Tang Xiaoxi. Qin Yin and Tang Xiaoxi studied it together. Thus, the inscriptions on the divine tomes of the 8 laws in the heavenly tome forest were all under the control of the Zhe Tian Palace. In the 3 days after returning to Lanyan City, Lin Muyu tried many times to write a divine tome, but she failed again and again. The key to writing a book was related to one's state of mind, but not every inscription could draw upon the power of heaven and earth. In 3 days, Lin Muyu inscribed nearly 20 tool embryos, but only 2 books were completed. One was a middle-grade earth book, and the other was a high-grade earth book. The rest were all failures. On the other hand, Qin Yin had completed 3 books, 1 low-grade earth book and 2 top-grade spiritual books. This made Tang Xiaoxi extremely envious. After a trip to the Heavenly Tome Forest, Qin Yin's cultivation in Heavenly Tomes was already firmly above Tang Xiaoxi's. In the afternoon, Jin Xiaotang appeared in the Valiant Dragon Legion's camp. She was dressed in a beautiful green robe, and when her gaze fell on the embryos in front of Lin Muyu, she could not help but light up with joy. Wow! Is this a high-grade earth book? This is a middle-grade earth book, and there's also a low-grade earth book. Are these two embryos top-grade spiritual books? Oh my god, were all these divine tomes written by Brother Yu? Jin Xiaotang was overjoyed. Not all of them. Lin Muyu did not tell her that 3 of them were written by Empress Qin Yin. After all, this was too shocking. It was too early for news that Empress Qin Yin was well versed in the law of light to spread. She said, only 2 were written by me, and the rest were written by my friends. Xiaotang, how much can these divine tomes sell for? I'm not sure about the others, but this high-grade wind law tome should be worth at least this much. She extended her index finger. 10 million? Lin Muyu was overjoyed. Can you really sell it for that much? Maybe more expensive. Jin Xiaotang said, up until now, very few of the masters in the Heavenly Tome Pavilion have been able to write an upper-tier earth tome. This upper-tier earth tome is probably the most powerful heavenly tome in Lanyan City. Brother Yu, are you sure you want to sell this book? Lin Muyu muttered to herself for a moment. She thought about how powerful the earth tome was. If it were to fall into the hands of a thief, the consequences would be unthinkable. She said, I'm not selling it. It's just a display item to increase the Chamber of Commerce's popularity. All right. Jin Xiaotang readily agreed. Lin Muyu smiled. In the future, don't sell the tomes of heaven that I write that are above the level of earthly tomes. They are only for display. When there's a war in the future, you have to return all of them to me. These tomes of heaven are for killing, not for display. Yes, Xiaotang knows. Does Big Brother you still want to engrave it? Of course. Lin Muyu had a card up her sleeve. Her attainments in engraving seemed to be above the heavenly tome. Furthermore, engraving was a passive ability, so it was not impossible to use it to earn money. Perhaps she could only rely on engraving to earn money in the future. The next day, Heavenly Tome Pavilion. What? Ji Lin's hand trembled slightly, and the tea in his teacup spilled onto the ground. He looked up at Ji Shang and said, Shang, say that again. Did I hear wrongly? The Purple Flower Chamber of Commerce displayed a upper-tier earth tome? Yes, grandfather. Ji Shang said respectfully, it's a upper-tier earth tome of the law of wind. It's very rich in spiritual power. Once it activates the power of heaven and earth, its might will be unimaginable. I really don't know who was able to engrave such a heavenly tome pavilion. At the side, the Lu Residence's patriarch, Lu Yan, took a sip of tea and said, Lord Steward, it looks like there's another capable person in Lanyan City besides the Heavenly Tome Pavilion. It's a pity that such a talent was not used by our Heavenly Tome Pavilion. Ji Lin said, does Lord Lu Yan know who wrote this upper-tier earth tome? I don't know. Lu Yan said, but I can deduce that this person must be inextricably linked to the Purple Flower Chamber of Commerce. Otherwise, he wouldn't have displayed this priceless artifact embryo in the Purple Flower Chamber of Commerce. Isn't he afraid of someone snatching it? Ji Shang said, Lord Lu Yen might not know this, but the Purple Flower Chamber of Commerce has at least 200 divine temple experts guarding it. Let alone snatching it, they can't even take a glance at it. Lu Yen stroked his white beard and said, Steward Ji Lin, the waters of Lanyan City's heavenly tome realm are getting murkier and murkier. I'm afraid this isn't a good thing. It's obvious that someone wants to establish a faction outside of the Heavenly Tome Pavilion. If we don't handle this matter properly, I'm afraid that the Heavenly Tome Pavilion will fall out of favor with Her Highness. At that time, I'm afraid that everything we have will disappear in the blink of an eye. Oh. Does Lord Lu Yen have an idea? We must find out who this person is as soon as possible and recruit him into the Heavenly Tome Pavilion. Also, Lu Yan's eyes shone brightly as he said, there's also news from Iha country's Xiang City. Man Ning held a Heavenly Tome conference, and a person called the Li Residence Protector wrote a supreme grade book on the law of fire. He then fled Xiang City, and some people suspect that he has already entered the Empire's borders. If Lord Steward can find this Li Residence Protector and invite him to join the Heavenly Tome Pavilion with great rewards and status, then Her Highness will value our Heavenly Tome Pavilion even more, right? Ji Lin slowly nodded. What Lord Lu Yen said is extremely correct. I'll immediately send people to investigate and find this Li Residence Protector and have him work for us. Alright, then this old man wishes Lord Steward success in advance. Lord Lu Yen is too polite. At dusk, the setting sun shone on the pavilions of the spiritual medicine department like fire. Inside the pavilion, there was a small table filled with delicacies. There was also a pot of boiling rock mutton. Xiao had a happy expression as she looked at Lin Muyu and Tang Xiaoxi with a grin, saying, I haven't seen you for a long time, where did he go to cultivate? Lin Muyu said, he went to Lingnan. Oh. Xiao blinked her starry eyes and did not ask further, smiling, looks like Yu's cultivation should have improved quite a bit. Yes. Lin Muyu looked at Xiao and said, on the other hand, big sister Xiao, how is your imperial sword technique? Xiao chuckled, second heavenly realm, I tested my strength 3 days ago at Temple Deacon Shenyuan Hong's place. I have the strength of a level 78 heavenly king. He even invited me to become a deacon in the temple if I don't want to work in the spiritual medicine department. Ha ha ha. Lin Muyu chuckled, not being a great deacon of the spiritual medicine department and becoming a deacon in the temple, great deacon Shenyuan Hong really knows how to joke. Right, Xiao Shi, and I still have a piece of meat here, leave it for big sister Chu Yao to help you cultivate. I hope you can step into the saint realm as soon as possible, then you will be able to maintain your beauty forever. I want to too. Chu Yao pursed her lips and said, the people in the spiritual medicine division said that if I can't step into the saint domain within these 2 years, then it will be too late. At that time, even if I step into the saint domain, I will be an old woman. Wu, you said that after 30 years, when I step into the saint domain, I will become Grandma Chu Yao. And looking at you and little Shi who are still so young, I will want to die. At this point, Chu Yao's voice was indescribably sorrowful. Lin Muyu could not help but smile, no, Xiao Shi and I will not watch you grow old. Tang Xiaoxi also smiled, saying, right, if big sister Chu Yao needs anything, Mu and I will do our best to help. Right. I have good news for you, big sister Chu Yao. Oh. What good news? Tang Xiaoxi sat up straight, puffed out her round chest, and said with a smile, outside the demon subduing pass, the demon clan guards the forest of the Infinity Edge, and now they have joined the savage tribe to guard the forest of the Infinity Edge. Just half a month ago, a wandering traveler from the desert said that he had seen a powerful hermit in the desert, and the martial art he was good at was Lord Chu Huayin's unique martial art, the star-picking finger. So half a month ago, I entrusted the demon clan to look for this hermit, bringing a large sum of money and a sword used by Lord Chu Huayin as a keepsake, hoping to find the mental cultivation method of the star-picking finger from him. As she said this, Tang Xiaoxi paused for a moment, and then said with a smile, the star-picking finger is a unique martial art, and the mental cultivation method naturally has its own marvelous aspects. If Big Sister Chu Yao can learn the star-picking finger, I believe it will not be a problem for you to step into the Saint Realm in 1 or 2 years. Big Brother's star-picking finger. Chu Yao was slightly absent-minded, and then she raised her head and said gratefully, if Big Sister Xiao can find the mental cultivation method of the star-picking finger, Chu Yao will be eternally grateful, and the star-picking finger will definitely become the unique martial art of the Chu clan, passed down from generation to generation. Tang Xiaoxi couldn't help but laugh. Good, that's for sure. Suddenly, she seemed to think of something, and said with a smile, passed down from generation to generation of the Chu clan? It seems that Big Sister Chu Yao has already found a man to marry, right? Chu Yao was stunned, and said, no, Xiaoxi, you are thinking too much. As she said that, Chu Yao looked at Lin Muyu faintly, and immediately, Lin Muyu was stunned, and she almost spat out the wine that she had just taken a sip of. She said, Big Sister Chu Yao, are you thinking of something crazy? Chu Yao smiled without saying a word. She was also shocked by the crazy idea in her heart, but after thinking about it carefully, she felt that it was a great temptation, and it was indeed feasible. After experiencing the upheavals of the past few years, Chu Yao had also become stronger and more independent, but the thoughts in her heart had also become more stubborn. Her thoughts were very simple. If she couldn't give birth to the child of the person she loved, then what was the point of being a woman? But this idea was too bold, and she had to eat a piece of goat meat to calm herself down. Just as they were about to finish eating, suddenly, a person wearing the badge of a golden star instructor from the holy sanctum walked over, and respectfully cupped his fists to Lin Muyu, and said, Great Deacon, something happened in the beast taming division. Would you like to go and take a look? I am no longer the Great Deacon. Lin Muyu frowned. Change the way you address me from now on to Commander. Yes. The Golden Star instructor bowed respectfully, and said, something really happened in the beast taming division. Okay, I will go now. Lin Muyu stood up, and so did Tang Xiaoxi and Chu Yao, presumably to go and see what had happened. Chapter 540. In the temple, the beast taming department was in an uproar. When Lin Muyu, Tang Xiaoxi, and Chu Yao arrived, they saw the two groups arguing endlessly, their faces red with anger. The three deacons, Guiyang, Zhou Yao, and Zhenfang, were on the side, but they couldn't maintain the stability of the situation. Deacon Xianyuanhong didn't interfere with the management of the beast taming department, so he didn't appear. At the edge of the beast pen, a young silver star sparring master hugged a dead swift wolf and cried incessantly. There were claw marks on his arm, and blood flowed out. A middle-aged sparring master next to him patted his shoulder and said, Bull, don't cry. Now that the swift wolf is dead, we can just go to the dragon-seeking forest and catch another one. Don't provoke them anymore. The young sparring master wiped his tears and said, Uncle Zhao, you saw it too. Those instructors don't even treat us sparring masters as human beings. We agreed to stop the fight, but Zhangqing let his bloodthirsty tiger bite my swift wolf to death. Not far away, a silver star instructor who was caressing the bloodthirsty tiger's head sneered and said, Niu Bei, if you're willing to bet, you must be willing to accept your loss. Since we've agreed to a duel and my bloodthirsty tiger accidentally killed your swift wolf, you should just accept your fate. Stop crying and act like a man. At most, this young master will pay you back. A swift wolf cub is at most 20 Jin coins. This young master can afford it. Bull said angrily, you are also a beast taming master, and you have also learned the beast taming art. Don't you know that after the spirit fusion, the master and pet's consciousness become one? You killed my swift wolf, just like you killed me once. Do you know that kind of pain and despair? My pet doesn't want to die. I can feel its cries for help. You, people like you don't understand. Zhang Qing stood up and said indifferently, then what do you want? Do you want to fight me? If so, I accept your challenge, but the next person to die might be you and not the wolf. You. The bull clam gritted his teeth but did not say anything else. He knew that he was no match for Zhang Cheng. At this time, Lin Muyu parted the crowd and brought Chu Yao and Tang Xiaoxi in. Guiyang, Zhou Yao, and Zhenfeng all saw them and bowed respectfully, Marquis Yunling, Princess Shi, and Grand Deacon Chu Yao. The three people who had come were far too esteemed. Although Lin Muyu had resigned from her position as the Grand Deacon of the Divine Hall, he had single-handedly established and controlled the beast-taming department. Xianyuan Hong had never overstepped his authority over the beast-taming department, which was probably what Qin Yin had wanted. As for Xing Feng, Xing Yifan had performed a meritorious deed in saving the emperor's life, so he was reinstated and rebuilt the Shenwei Battalion as the Shenwei Battalion. Since Xing Yifan was friends with Xianyuan Hong, Xing Feng re-entered the Holy Temple as a deacon. Xing Yifan searched for various secret methods to restore his son's Sea of Qi, which had been destroyed by Chu Huai. What happened? Lin Muyu asked. Zhenfeng cupped his fists and said, reporting to Commander Yu, 2 people from the beast-taming department were competing with their pets. Due to a mistake, the Silver Star instructor Zhang Cheng's bloodthirsty tiger killed the Bronze Star training master Bull Clam's swift wolf. According to the laws of the Empire, Zhang Cheng is a noble while Bull Clam is just a commoner, so we should not pursue this matter. However, according to the rules of the Divine Hall, we will force Zhang Cheng to compensate for Bull Clam's loss. Lin Muyu furrowed her brows and walked forward. Bull Clam. Head Deacon. Bull Clam couldn't change his words and immediately said, Commander, I had an agreement with Zhang Cheng to fight, but Zhang Cheng was too ruthless. My swift wolf was bitten to death, and no matter how much I begged for mercy, he wouldn't order the bloodthirsty tiger to stop. I hope that Commander can seek justice for me and for the commoner training masters who were bullied in the Holy Temple. Lin Muyu couldn't help but sigh. The Empire's rules were strict, but they also divided people into different classes. To a certain extent, the Empire's level of civilization was indeed not as good as the Iha nation, which promoted equality of all living beings. This kind of differential treatment was hard to escape even in the Holy Temple. However, after experiencing so many things, Lin Muyu also knew that this kind of conflict between nobles and commoners wasn't something she could change. Therefore, she could only change what she could, such as the Holy Temple. The next moment, Lin Muyu looked straight at Zhang Cheng and said, Zhang Cheng. Zhang Cheng's body trembled, and he hurriedly knelt on one knee and cupped his fists. Commander, this subordinate is here. Just like you, Niu Bei is also a member of the Sanctum. Once there is a war, you and him will be comrades who will go through thick and thin together. You killed his swift wolf now, aren't you afraid that he will stab you in the back? Zhang Cheng frowned. Commander, this subordinate knows his mistake, but Bull Clam is just a commoner Copper Star sparring master, yet he dares to be so arrogant. This subordinate can't stand it. Offend? Lin Muyu couldn't help but laugh. What do you mean by offend? Zhang Cheng said, according to the rules, when eating in the Holy Temple's cafeteria, the commoners should give up their table for the nobles. However, not only did Bull Clam not give up, he was also arrogant towards this subordinate. This subordinate was indignant, so I challenged him. Lin Muyu looked at him indifferently and said, when it comes to eating, everyone should be equal. It's just that this rule of inequality is imprinted on us when we are born. Zhang Cheng, you are a martial artist of the Holy Temple. Martial artists cultivate their heart and virtue. A strong martial artist's state of mind should be broad and calm. As the saying goes, 100 rivers run into the sea. It's great to have tolerance, it's great to have no desires. Do you think Deacon Guiyang or Great Deacon Xianyuan Hong would fight with someone over a table? Zhang Cheng actually revealed a trace of grievance and said, but Commander, this subordinate is a 5th-class noble of the Empire. Why should I be bullied by a commoner like Bull Clam? Commander, you can't just protect Bull Clam and bully me. Tang Xiaoxi couldn't help but laugh. Chu Yao also smiled. Lin Muyu still looked at Zhang Cheng and said, Zhang Cheng, as a 1st-class noble of the Empire, I still use an equal attitude to reason with you. This is the true grace of a noble. Think about it carefully. Men, take Xianxia away and put him in confinement for 3 days. Yes. Jinfeng cupped his fists and signaled with his eyes. 2 instructors immediately took Xianxia away. Lin Muyu looked at Guiyang and respectfully cupped her fists. Grandpa Guiyang, shall we go see the great deacon? Yes. In the main hall of the holy temple, Xianyuan Hong was reading a stack of scrolls attentively. He only raised his head when Lin Muyu, Guiyang, Tang Xiaoxi, Chu Yao, and Jinfeng entered. His kind face was full of smiles as he said, You're here? Yes. Have a seat. Many thanks, great deacon. Lin Muyu arranged for Tang Xiaoxi, Chu Yao, and the others to sit down and serve tea. Then, she sat down on a chair close to Xianyuan Hong and said, Great deacon, I've just settled a dispute between the nobles and commoners. I believe such matters have always existed in the holy temple. Yes. Xianyuan Hong nodded. The holy temple has been established for nearly 10,000 years and has left behind many bad habits. Not to mention the holy temple, there are many bad habits in the entire empire. However, these need to be changed. After all, the upper echelons of the empire are still decided by the nobles. We can't rush for quick results. I know. Lin Muyu said, that's why I have a plan that I would like to discuss with the great deacon. Oh. Xianyuan Hong couldn't help but smile. You, speak your mind. There's no need to be polite with me. Yes. Lin Muyu nodded. I hope that the great deacon can establish a martial virtue hall in the holy temple. The position of the martial virtue hall is above all the other halls in the holy temple. Every cultivator who enters the holy temple must first cultivate their martial virtues before learning martial arts. Before they learn martial arts, they must first understand what martial virtues are. This way, they can reduce the infighting between the people in the holy temple. Cultivate martial virtues? Xianyuan Hong muttered to himself. After a while, he said solemnly, if a new martial virtue hall is established, I'm afraid the holy temple will have to draft a new set of martial virtues. If you can draft it, I will establish the martial virtue hall. The martial virtue hall will be above all other halls. All right. Lin Muyu cupped her fists and said, I would like to borrow Grandfather Guiyang for a while. Oh. Grandfather Guiyang is an honest and virtuous person. With his assistance, I should be able to get twice the results with half the effort. Good. Xianyuan Hong smiled. Deacon Guiyang, I'll leave it to you to assist you. Yes, great deacon. After exiting the grand hall, Guiyang said helplessly, You forced me to do something beyond my abilities. I, Guiyang, have lived a mediocre life. How would I know what martial virtues are? Lin Muyu turned around and held Guiyang's hands with a smile. Grandfather Guiyang, you're too modest. Why did great deacon Lei Hong give you such a heavy responsibility? It's not because of your extraordinary martial arts cultivation, but because Grandfather Guiyang is calm, generous, and open-minded. I won't say anything more about the martial virtues of the holy temple. I'll leave it all to you, Grandfather Guiyang. Guiyang was taken aback. He had lived a mediocre life and was always wise to protect himself. He didn't expect Lin Muyu to praise him like this. Jinfeng cupped his fists and said, Deacon Guiyang is a modest person. You're the most suitable person to cultivate martial virtues. Tang Xiaoxi smiled and said, Grandpa Guiyang, you don't have to decline anymore. You also know that Mumu is busy with military affairs all day long and has to cultivate. He has no time to recultivate his martial virtue. Besides, Mumu is still too young and inexperienced. I'm afraid the martial virtue he cultivated won't be able to convince the public. If it's the martial virtue you wrote, it will be completely different. Guiyang couldn't say anything else. He cupped his fists and said, Then I'll obey Princess Xi's orders. I'll do my best to write the martial virtues. Yes. At night, he returned to the commander's tent in the Longdan army camp. After cultivating the forging dragon bone remnant scroll for a few days, he heard Wei Chao's voice coming from outside. Commander, the Imperial Army's Deputy Commander Zhang Wei requests an audience. Zhang Wei? What's the matter? I don't know. He wants to break into the camp, this bastard. Lin Muyu stood up, only to see Zhang Wei walking in, looking travel-worn. Commander Yu, why are you so tyrannical and unreasonable? How am I tyrannical and unreasonable? Lin Muyu was confused. Zhang Wei said, Zhang Qing of the Beast Taming Division only killed Niu Bei's swift wolf by mistake. Commander actually punished him so heavily. I, Zhang Wei, am not satisfied. Zhang Qing is a noble while Niu Bei is just a commoner. Why? Lin Muyu frowned. Old Zhang, tell me the truth. Who is Zhang Qing to you? Zhang Wei couldn't help but blush. That kid is this general's little whore brother. Humph, I knew it. Chapter 541. Master, just say the word, are you going to release Zhang Qing or not? Zhang Wei sat cross-legged in the commander's tent, looking like a hoodlum, as though he would not leave until Lin Muyu spoke. You! Lin Muyu was furious. He pointed at him and said, Old Zhang, with your conduct, you still have the cheek to be the deputy commander of the Imperial Guards. If I were you, I would have been so ashamed that I would have been promoted to a corporal. Zhang Wei stared at her, anyways. Master, you don't know how to reward and punish him. What did Zhang Qing do wrong? You punished him like that. According to the Empire's laws, he definitely did not break any laws. Furthermore, he is willing to compensate for Cow Muscle's loss. He is already extremely benevolent. He violated martial ethics. Lin Muyu said indifferently. Zhang Wei was startled. What martial ethics? Old Zhang, have never heard of it after being in temple for so many years. Sigh, forget it. Lin Muyu said helplessly, I don't think you understand martial ethics. When I first entered temple, you bullied me. Zhang Wei was a little ashamed and said, why are you bringing up the past? You are a bad person. Lin Muyu glanced at him. So you also know that I can beat the crap out of you with one finger? Zhang Wei pointed at him, look, what martial ethics are you talking about? You are the great deacon of temple, you cannot speak vulgarities, even I, old Zhang, do not speak vulgarities. Lin Muyu spat out, and said, locking Zhang Qing up is temple's matter, go ask Deacon Guiyang tomorrow, don't talk to me about this, if you don't leave. Wei Chou, go get Situ Sen and Situ Shui to come in and chase Zhang Wei out, he is disturbing my rest. Wei Chou laughed outside the tent, this subordinate will go now. Zhang Wei immediately climbed up, I cannot afford to offend you. Alright, I will go ask Deacon Guiyang tomorrow. Humph, go. Heh, Zhang Wei shamelessly left. Under the starlight outside, a group of Imperial Army cavalrymen were waiting for him. One of the Kiliarchs approached him and asked, Vice Commander, how was it? Did Commander Yu give you face? Zhang Wei turned around and glared at him. Commander Yu and I have known each other for a long time and we have deep feelings for each other. We will solve our own problems. Why are you talking so much? What does it have to do with you? The Chiliarch fell silent. It seemed that Zhang Wei had been snubbed, and it was best not to provoke him. Otherwise, it would be bad if he exploded. Zhang Wei had a fiery temper, and the entire Imperial Army only gave face to Feng Jixing. After all, Feng Jixing had already stepped into the Holy King realm. Even 20 Zhang Weis would not be a match for him. Wei Chou strode into the tent, smiling. Commander, you've gone to bed early. Bai Yin will be on duty for the rest of the night, so you can sleep in peace. As for tomorrow's matters, we'll settle them tomorrow. Lin Muyu nodded and suddenly asked, Wei Chou, have you been busy with military affairs recently? It's all right. With General Sun and General Shui's help, I don't have to personally attend to all the affairs of the Valiant Dragon Legion. Thus, I've been rather idle these days. That's good. Lin Muyu smiled. Since that's the case, I'll appoint you as the person in charge of the beast taming department. You'll be in charge of it. You've been in charge of it before, so you should know the pros and cons, right? N. Wei Chou cupped his fists respectfully. The beast taming department currently has at least 200 people. Most of them have cultivated the first 2 volumes of the beast taming art and confuse with spirit beasts. However, due to limited conditions, they can only tame low-level spirit beasts such as wolves, which are not very useful in battle. That's the problem you need to solve. Lin Muyu smiled. The spirit beasts of the beast taming department are too messy. They are not very useful in battle. Take the wolves for example. I think, even a 3,000-year-old wolf would not be able to withstand an armor demon's axe, right? That's right. The wolf's defense is too weak. It's not suitable as a beast of war. In my opinion, there's a lake in the depths of the dragon-seeking forest called the Cloud Dragon Lake. A type of land tortoise lives on the lakeside of the Cloud Dragon Lake called the Blazing Black Tortoise. The shell of the Blazing Black Tortoise is extremely hard. Even white diamond arrows can't penetrate it. The Blazing Black Tortoise that has lived for more than 3,000 years will have matured shells. Perhaps a cultivator with a higher cultivation in the beast taming department can tame a Blazing Black Tortoise to aid in battle. Sure. Lin Muyu nodded. I'll leave the taming of the Blazing Black Tortoise to you. Inform me before you set off. I'll go with everyone. We must minimize casualties. Yes, I understand. The next morning, the bell in the Divine Temple reverberated. It was the bell for the Divine Temple staff to assemble in the morning. More than 1,000 Divine Temple staff stood in great numbers in the huge Divine Temple square. Lin Muyu, Xin Yuanhong, and other important higher-ups were also present. Guiyang held a scroll in his hand and read out the rules of the martial virtues after the establishment of the Martial Virtue Hall. There were a total of 8 virtues: benevolence, loyalty, stopping war, facing the abyss, bravery, self-improvement, openness, and humility. Lin Muyu was very satisfied with the 8 great martial virtues. Getting Guiyang to write the martial virtues was indeed the right choice. With the establishment of the Martial Virtue Hall, the 8 great martial virtues would be like waves that would constantly affect the Empire's territory outside of Lanyan City. After that, Guiyang naturally became the first deacon of the Martial Virtue Hall. This was also the result of Lin Muyu's recommendation. After all, if Guiyang could not do it, he could only do it. To be honest, Lin Muyu did not have much time to waste in the Martial Virtue Hall. In the afternoon, he brought Bai Yin and the other guards to the Zine Flower Merchant Guild. Naturally, it was still Jin Xiaotang who personally welcomed him. Today, Jin Xiaotang was wearing a light pink dress. She was delicate and beautiful, and her youthful appearance was truly enchanting. She gracefully walked forward and said with a smile, "Brother Yu, what do you want to buy from the Merchant Guild today?" Lin Muyu calculated the items in the Qingkuan pouch and said, "Give me the gems I need for the quarter mark. Also, prepare some dark steel and low-grade dark gold powder." Oh. Jin Xiaotang was extremely intelligent and had already guessed some clues. She held on to Lin Muyu's hand and walked out of the small hall. She moved closer to his ear and said, "Indeed, a superb weapon that has both the inscription and the heavenly book will definitely have a sky-high price." Lin Muyu could not help but be speechless. Jin Xiaotang was really too smart. She had guessed his thoughts just like that. That's right. Ever since the heavenly book reappeared, the sales of weapons in the major merchant guilds had reached a bottleneck. The price could no longer go up. Spiritual and mystical grade weapons had basically become weapon embryos. Most of the prices had dropped by at least 50%. At this time, the most sought-after weapons were spiritual and mystical grade weapons that had the inscription or the heavenly book. Therefore, this time, Lin Muyu wanted to make use of his free time to forge in batches. Although the probability of a book being formed was relatively low, once it was formed, it would be a priceless treasure. After more than 2 hours, they had bought a large amount of dark steel, spirit stones, and gems. They were transported back with the help of the horse carriages from the Longdan army camp. In the afternoon, they closed the door with a bang and instructed Bai Yin and Wei Chou not to see anyone else. They were to focus on forging weapons. From afternoon to night, a total of 24 longswords were forged. All of them were mystical grade weapons. Basically, they were mystical grade level 7 to mystical grade level 2. These longswords were highly sought after treasures 5 years ago. However, the market was becoming more and more mature now. Blacksmiths from all over the world had gathered in Lanyan City. In addition, Su Muyun's subordinates, Yuchi Tian, Yuchi Yen, and other members of the Yuchi family were constantly producing mystical grade weapons. Therefore, the market for mystical grade weapons had been hyped up. It was no longer as popular as before. The 24 longswords did not have names. They only had numbers 1 to 24. This was Lin Muyu's plan to mass-produce them. Clang! Longsword number 1 was placed on the table. Lin Muyu picked up the carving knife and began to inscribe on the hilt of the sword. Level 5 Dragon Slaying Seal could provide the weapon with the effect of a dragon power attack. This was also the seal with the highest success rate for Lin Muyu's current engraving skills. However, it was extremely difficult to inscribe the complicated dragon slaying seal on the small hilt of the sword. Not long after, the sword was embedded into the dragon heart stone. However, the blade was dull and the engraving was actually broken. Lin Muyu calmed himself down and put the broken sword aside. He could use it as the embryo of the heavenly book later to inscribe again. It was all right. He could not explode in his mind. He could take it slow. As a result, the engraving of the next few weapons was successful. The moment they were embedded into the dragon heart stone, they bloomed with the radiance of the dragon slaying seal. When it was late at night, Lin Muyu's forehead was already covered with sweat. He had successfully engraved 11 of the 24 longswords. This success rate was already considered to be at the peak. Phew, he took a deep breath, put down the carving knife, picked up the spiritual pen, and filled it with sufficient low-grade dark gold powder. It was time to inscribe the heavenly book. The surface area of the sword was considered relatively large. Lin Muyu did not pursue to inscribe a complete heavenly book. Instead, he wanted to inscribe a simplified version of the heavenly book. The heavenly book that was extracted from the heavenly book was of the fire element. After all, the fire element was a pure attack type. The dragon-slaying seal was also an attack type. Moreover, it was engraved on a long sword. Swoosh! Sword number 1 actually became a book. The orange light was very intense. It was a top-grade spiritual book of the law of fire. Lin Muyu couldn't help but feel a little excited. He continued to write with sword number 2. It was a pity that he had written it badly. He did not comprehend his state of mind. This sword could only become a semi-finished embryo with the engraving but not the heavenly book. He was not discouraged and continued to write. However, the engravings were ruined one by one. Either it became a book but not engraved, or it was engraved but not a book. Lin Muyu's mood gradually worsened. There was a sense of frustration that came from nowhere. It was too hopeless. All the way until it was almost dawn, the long sword in his hands suddenly burst out with a bright light. A pale yellow light soared into the sky. It was a low-grade heavenly book. Furthermore, this sword with serial number 21 already had a successful god-slaying seal. Just when Lin Muyu was about to lose all hope, the first successful work was born. This sword was also the only one among the 24 longswords that had the blessing of 2 divine powers. It was originally a mystic rank 1 top-grade embryo and had a complete god-slaying seal. Then, it activated the heaven and earth energy of the low-grade heavenly book. This sword might be the unparalleled sword in the world, right? Chapter 542. Heavenly Book Pavilion, Elders Conference. Bada. Bada, Ouyang Ping took a puff from his pipe, his face was cloudy. Lu Yen squinted his eyes and said, "Everyone, please say something. What kind of extraordinary person is behind the Zine Flower Chamber of Commerce to be proficient in both engraving techniques and the heavenly book technique?" Lin remained silent. After a long while, he looked at Qin Yong and said, Prince Zhong, you are the uncle of Her Highness the Empress. Perhaps you can ask Her Highness the Empress to issue an edict and invite the extraordinary person behind the Zine Flower Chamber of Commerce out. Qin Yong couldn't help but laugh. Lord Manager, please don't joke around. This is an extraordinary person who can write a top-grade Earth book. Adding on the current possibility, he might also be proficient in engraving techniques. If such an extraordinary person really joins the Heavenly Book Pavilion, do you think Her Highness will promote him to be the new manager? After all, whoever can write a stronger Heavenly Book will be promoted to manager. This is the agreement when the Heavenly Book Pavilion was established. Lin once again fell into silence. He naturally wasn't willing to give up his position as the number one person in the Heavenly Book Pavilion. However, no one in the Empire was able to write a Heavenly Book technique, and that extraordinary person might be the first person to do so. If that was the case, his position as the manager of the Heavenly Book Pavilion would be in jeopardy. Perhaps, letting this extraordinary person remain a mystery was the best outcome. Beside Lu Yan, Lu Feng cupped his fists and said, Manager Lin, no matter what, we should think of a way. Otherwise, the Zine Flower Chamber of Commerce's limelight will be completely above our Heavenly Book Pavilion. Where will we put our face? Lin said, Young Master Lu Feng is right. I heard that young Master Lu Feng is trying to write a top-grade Earth book, but I don't know if it's true. Lu Feng frowned. Junior's writing strength is insufficient. I am truly ashamed that I can't write a top-grade Earth book. Lu Ying, who was beside him, said, Then why don't we go find Jin Xiaotang and ask her who this person is? It's too boring to keep guessing here. Lu Yan hurriedly said, Don't speak nonsense. Lin took a deep breath, stretched his body, and said, Everyone, from tomorrow onwards, I will go into seclusion to comprehend the Heavenly Book mantra. The matters of the Heavenly Book Pavilion will be jointly managed by Prince Zhong, Lord Lu Yan, and Lord Ouyang Ping. I hope that everyone can work together and make the Heavenly Book Pavilion the pride of the Empire's Heavenly Book world. Yes, Lord Steward. In Eagle Nest Mountain, the interior of the mountain was completely dark. In the darkness, one could vaguely see a man with an imposing figure sitting cross-legged on a rock. Streams of dou qi slowly revolved around his body. The flowing dou qi seeped into his skin and formed clouds that lingered around him in the blink of an eye. Layers of golden energy pulsated on the surface of his skin. It was an indestructible energy that originated from the unbreakable Vajra profound energy. He slowly let out a sigh of relief and entered a very peaceful state of mind. Suddenly, his spiritual perception flew out of his body and soared into the sky. Beyond the 9 heavens, the sky was filled with golden radiance and dense divine power. Between the spirit mountains, there were images of various Buddhas. The Buddhas did not speak and only put their palms together. In the next moment, Sanskrit chants appeared beside his ears. It was boundlessly auspicious. Feng Jixing couldn't help but lie down in the sky and accept the baptism of the Sanskrit chants. Every inch of his body was bathed in this extremely comfortable Buddhist profound energy. Immortal Sanskrit chants. Finally, Feng Jixing cultivated the Vajra protection divine art to the 6th stage. He could clearly feel the Vajra protection chi on the surface of his body becoming more and more tyrannical and solid. He had already achieved initial success in this divine art. At the very least, he no longer needed to rely on battle armor to protect himself. Moreover, when he was fighting against a powerhouse of the same level, relying on battle armor alone was far from enough. This was also one of the reasons why Feng Jixing was so focused on cultivating the Vajra protection divine art. His cultivation of the Vajra protection divine art had already surpassed that of Lin Muyu. The reason was simple: focus. During this period of time, Feng Jixing had only cultivated the Vajra protection divine art, while Lin Muyu had to cultivate the star arts and dragon forging bone remnant scroll. Knock knock, the sound of knocking came from the stone door. Who is it? Feng Jixing slowly opened his eyes. His body was still in a cross-legged position. The strong muscles on his arms and chest were glistening with sweat. Unknowingly, he was already drenched in sweat. Subordinate Luo Yu requests to see the commander. Come in. Creak. The stone door opened and Luo Yu walked in with a torch. She respectfully knelt on one knee and said, Commander, you have been cultivating in the mountain for a full 17 days. I know. Has you come back? He came back a few days ago. Luo Yu said, General Feng, there was a letter from Lingdong province. They found new movements of the demon race. What happened to the demon race? Feng Jixing raised his eyebrows and asked. Someone saw Qianfeng commanding the newly formed Armor Demon Legion to train. He prepared heavy battle shields and sharp steel spears for the armor demons. The battle formation they are practicing is somewhat similar to the Qingquan battle method used by General Feng. What? Feng Jixing gasped in disbelief and said, Qianfeng has only seen the Qingquan battle method once. Has he learned it? I don't know. But I do know that Qianfeng has begun to forge armors for the armor demons to protect the heart, head and other fatal parts of the armor demons. Moreover, a batch of armor demons is sent to Qianfeng almost every day. Our scouts exchange their lives for the intelligence. Qianfeng has rebuilt at least 50,000 armor demons. A centipede dies but doesn't fall down. Feng Jixing slowly murmured and said, Have you and His Highness received this news? Not yet. Go and tell them immediately that the Empire must strengthen the training of the soldiers. The demon race has not given up their intention to offend us. In addition, immediately send out an order to strengthen the defense of the steel wall. No one knows when the demon race will launch the next attack. Yes, subordinate understands. Does General Feng still want to continue training? Yes. Feng Jixing nodded his head. I want to master the 7th layer of the diamond body protection in one go before I come out. You go first, discuss any news regarding the demon race with Yu. When I'm not around, he will be able to take charge. Yes. 2 days later, the Zine Flower Auction House had a great harvest. The 24 long swords that Lin Muyu forged were all sold. Among them, the most perfect one was sold at a price of 12.4 million Jin coins. The buyer was the Qian family, one of the tycoons in Lanyan City. The young master of the Qian family, Qian Lian, was also a practitioner. He had stepped into the heaven realm at a young age. Although he used Dream Return to Zenith as a help, he was still one of the best among the young generation. His father had high hopes for him, so he spent a lot of money to buy this perfect long sword. In the back hall of the Chamber of Commerce, Lin Muyu was counting the money happily. She had earned nearly 20 million Jin coins from this auction. The tight funds for the development of magic crystal cannon could be relieved for a while. Just as she was feeling happy, someone outside asked to see her. It was Wei Chou. Commander, we're ready. We'll set off tomorrow for the Cloud Dragon Lake in the depths of the Dragon Forest. Do you have time to go with us? Wei Chou asked carefully. Yes, of course. Prepare the weapons and food. Yes. After that, they went to the Zhe Tian Palace to bid farewell to Qin Yin and Tang Xiaoxi. Lin Muyu had to go to the Zhe Tian Palace to prepare for the next war. In the Cloud Refining Mountain Range in the Cloud Refining Province, the endless mountains reached the clouds as if they were going to pierce through the sky. There was not a single blade of grass growing on the mountain range. It had become a snowy region. It was said that the peak of the Cloud Refining Mountain Range was the place closest to the sky in the human world. However, it was also the most dangerous region. The cold wind was biting cold, and a whirlwind could tear an ordinary person's body into pieces. However, in this deserted place, a figure dashed up the steep cliff. It was a young man holding a spear. Faint flames lingered around his feet. It was the king's fighting flame. He was wearing leather boots. Every time his boots touched the wall, a purple dragon claw would appear and pierce into the rock stratum. This was also the reason why he could walk on the steep cliff as if it was flat ground. The spear rested on his shoulder, and he was carrying the corpse of a muntjac. There was a hint of joy on his face. After a few leaps, he landed on the snowy land at the peak of the cloud-refining mountain range. His figure flashed like lightning into a cave in the snowy region. "Master, Master." He smiled happily and said, "Look, Master, what did I catch?" Inside the cave, an old man with white hair and beard slowly opened his eyes. Looking at the proud expression on his face, the old man couldn't help but smile. "Xian, you went hunting again?" "Yes." The young man called Xian knelt on one knee and said, "Luo Xian greets Master. There is no food in the cloud-refining mountain range, so I wanted to catch some game for Master." The old man laughed. "I have been cultivating for thousands of years. I am about to see through the secrets of heaven and step into the godly state, so I don't care about food." "Xian, you have already achieved some success in your studies. You have stepped into the Holy King state at the age of 29. How many people in this world can do that? It is time to go down the mountain." Luo Xian was stunned. "Master, I'm not going anywhere." "Nonsense." The old man's expression became stern. "Remember, you are the descendant of the famous General Luo Tonghai. The blood of a godly general flows in your body. Moreover, you have awakened your first-grade martial spirit, the Purple Dragon, more than 10 years ago. You were born extraordinary, so how can you stay in the wilderness with me? Go find your foster father." "My foster father?" Luo Xian was stunned. "Yes, when you were 7 years old, a general took you in as his foster son. Have you forgotten? Foster father, he." Luo Xian's face was full of displeasure. "Foster father took me in as his son, but he never came to see me. He must have forgotten about me." "How can that be? Your foster father is a feudal lord who controls half the country. Moreover, the cloud-refining mountain range is a dangerous place. How could he have come here without your cultivation? Go, find Duke Yun Su Muyun in the imperial capital. Be filial to him and be loyal to the empire. Your master will ascend to the godly world in 3 days. Xian, take care of yourself. Leave the cloud-refining mountain range tonight." "Yes, Master." Luo Xian knelt on the ground with tears streaming down her face. "When will disciple be able to see Master again after you ascend?" The old man smiled. "When you ascend to the heavenly world, Master will come looking for you. Cultivate well in the mortal world." "Yes, Master." You're tuning into the Carefree Valley YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.